Chapter 199. The Flying Star Sword technique was Ji Tianqing's ultimate skill, but it was not his trump card. At this point, Hang Chen had already been heavily injured by him, and his strength was weak to the extreme. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Hang Chen's momentum was gone and he was powerless to reverse the situation. There was no doubt that he would lose this battle. However, Hang Chen gritted his teeth and endured his injuries. He was still fantasizing about a desperate counterattack. Since that was the case, Ji Tianqing could only use his trump card to completely defeat Hang Chen and make him accept his defeat wholeheartedly. He slowly raised his palms with his left palm facing down and his right palm facing up. He pressed his palms together and activated the sword embryo in his body with all his might. Buzz! Amid the buzzing sound, Ji Tianqing's palms lit up with a dazzling golden light. A small golden sword appeared. The small golden sword was only the size of a thumb, but it shone with a dazzling golden light. It emitted a soaring sword essence and a sharp sword chi that seemed to be able to tear the sky apart. There was no doubt that this was his sword embryo. Ever since he had reached the mystic comprehending realm, the sword embryo had turned from a shadow to a solid object. Such a huge change naturally caused his strength to increase by leaps and bounds. The sword embryo, which had condensed all of his skills in his life, naturally had unparalleled power. However, Ji Tianqing knew very well that although using the sword embryo in a battle had unparalleled destructive power, it was a method of harming oneself in order to kill 1,000 enemies. He would exhaust his true origin and be weak for half a month before he could recover. Therefore, he only used the sword embryo in his body at this crucial moment that determined the outcome of the battle. As he continued to circulate his chi, the golden sword embryo floating in his palms spun rapidly and became bigger and bigger. Buzz buzz. Buzz buzz. The sword embryo spun rapidly, emitting a soaring sword essence and emitting a series of buzzing sounds. After a few short breaths, Ji Tianqing opened his palms. His left and right palms were separated by more than a meter. At this moment, the sword embryo had become a dazzling golden sword that was more than a meter long. With him as the center, the area within a 30-meter radius was filled with extremely sharp sword chi, and the marble floor was cracked by the sword chi. Everyone on the dragon viewing platform was shocked. Their eyes were fixed on Ji Tianqing's sword embryo. The weaker disciples all thought that it was Ji Tianqing's sword aura. Only the deacons and elders of the two sects could see that it was not an ordinary sword ray, but a real divine sword that contained the power to destroy the heavens and earth. Hang Chen was also shocked. He stared at Ji Tianqing's sword embryo with wide eyes, fear and terror surging in his eyes. He was also a sword Dao genius, so he could feel how terrifying the power of the golden sword embryo was. Finally, Ji Tianqing pushed the power of the sword embryo to the limit. He stared at Hang Chen and shouted coldly. Hang Chen. Time to end this. As soon as he finished speaking, he controlled the sword embryo with both hands and attacked Hang Chen from 10 meters away. The dazzling golden sword embryo immediately transformed into a 3-meter-long golden giant sword, releasing a torrential golden flame. The dazzling golden flame was like a pair of wings on the sword embryo, pushing the speed and power of the sword embryo to the limit. The entire dragon viewing platform was enveloped by the golden light and became dazzling. The sword will that burst forth from the sword embryo carved out numerous cracks and ravines on the ground of the dragon viewing platform. Hang Chen was enveloped by the terrifying sword essence. His eyes were full of fear and his legs were weak. Looking at the incoming giant sword, he could only use all his strength to raise the heavy sword of the setting sun and release the final attack. Bang! The winged giant sword of the setting sun hit Hang Chen viciously, drowning his body and exploding with a deafening sound. At that moment, everything within a 30-meter radius turned into a field of golden light. It was so dazzling that everyone could not open their eyes. Even the scorching sun high in the sky was covered by the golden sword chi, appearing dim and lifeless. The dragon viewing platform was shaking violently as if there was a super earthquake. Huge ravines were formed on the ground. Many disciples were shaken to the ground. They could not stand steadily and fell to the ground. The violent strength chi turned into a golden hurricane and exploded in all directions, blowing the sand and stones of the dragon viewing platform into the air. Such a gorgeous and shocking sword move shocked everyone on the platform. It was unforgettable. After a long time, the golden light and dust that blotted out the sky gradually dissipated. The dragon viewing platform was quiet again. Ji Tianqing and Hang Chen's figures also appeared. Everyone looked over and saw Ji Tianqing standing proudly in the field. His face was still cold and indifferent. The 3-meter-long giant sword of the setting sun had already turned back into the sword embryo and was put back into his body. The dazzling and devastating sword move just now had consumed 80% of his vital essence. He was very weak and his spirit was also somewhat dispirited. However, the result of that sword move was shocking. On the ground of the dragon viewing platform, a huge pit with a radius of 3 meters was blasted out. There were hundreds of wide cracks around it, like a spider web. Hang Chen was seriously injured and unconscious. He was lying at the bottom of the crater covered in blood. Half of his body was buried by countless gravel and dust. The armor he was wearing was completely destroyed and turned into a pile of twisted scrap iron. His tall and burly body was also covered with crisscrossing wounds. There was also a bowl-sized bloody hole in his waist that went through his front and back. It was a miracle that he was not killed on the spot after suffering such serious injuries. Even if he was lucky enough to survive, his injuries were too severe. He would not be able to recover without 2 or 3 years of recuperation. The dragon viewing platform was silent. Everyone was stunned. They widened their eyes and opened their mouths in silence. They even forgot to breathe. Even the deacons and elders of the 2 sects, as strong practitioners of the origin elixir realm, were shocked by this. After a long time, the crowd finally recovered from the shock. Suddenly, the crowd was in an uproar. They exclaimed and roared in disbelief. "Oh my God! Is that guy still human? He almost tore down the entire dragon viewing platform. He's only at LV1 of the Tongxian realm, but he has such terrifying destructive power. What kind of swordsmanship did he use? It's incredible. Today, I can see such a shocking swordsmanship and witness such a wonderful battle. It's simply a great fortune. Why? Why is it like this? How can Hang Chen lose? How can our Tianjian sect lose? Ha ha ha. We won. Ji Tianqing really created a miracle and defeated Hang Chen. Long Shan has finally returned to our Sky Pillar sect. Ji Tianqing. Good job. You're a great contributor to our sect. We're proud of you. Exclamations and shouts sounded one after another from the north and south sides of the dragon viewing platform. The people of the Sky Pillar sect were wild with excitement. Several disciples were dancing and cheering. Even Han Xiaoxing and Du Wu were discussing with surprise. The people of the Tianjian sect were grief-stricken. Their faces were extremely ugly as they discussed and cursed in disbelief. Especially Elder Master Tang and the Discipline Hall Elder, their faces were so gloomy that water was about to drip out. In this Longshan tournament, not only did they lose Longshan, but their newly recruited genius, Hang Chen, was also seriously injured and on the verge of death. It was simply miserable to the extreme. Today, the 6th update had arrived. Xiao He knew that the brothers and sisters were waiting anxiously, so he didn't wait until 20 o'clock to update. He updated in advance just to make everyone happy. Xiao He updated 6 times every day. This was known to all the brothers who had been following the updates for a few days. However, some people with bad intentions insisted that Xiao He only updated 2 or 3 times a day. For these people with ulterior motives, don't pay attention to them, and don't be misled by them. Chapter 200. The crowd on the dragon viewing platform clamored for a long time without quieting down. The people of the Tianjin sect were filled with grief, indignation, and humiliation. Elder Master Tang was too ashamed to announce the results of the competition. In the end, Chu Huaishan walked to the center of the field and announced the final result with a booming voice. The Sky Pillar sect wins the third match. After saying that, he looked at the two elders of the Heavenly Sword sect with a face full of smiles and said loudly, "I announce that the Sky Pillar sect has won 2 out of 3 matches in this Dragon Mountain Grand Tournament. From now on, Dragon Mountain belongs to the Sky Pillar sect. According to the rules, the people of the Tianjin sect must evacuate Dragon Mountain within 2 days." As his voice fell, the disciples of the Fengyun courtyard let out a burst of excited cheers. Everyone knew that the victory of this tournament was not easy to come by, and it was also beyond everyone's expectations. Ji Tianqing was worthy of being called the #1 genius of the Fengyun courtyard. He had created an incredible miracle in front of everyone and won victory and honor for the Sky Pillar sect. Although the disciples did not participate in the battle, they were fellow disciples of the same sect as Ji Tianqing. They were all on the same side and shared honor and disgrace. Now that Ji Tianqing had won an unbelievable victory, the disciples also felt honored and proud. The people of the Tianjin sect had gloomy faces and did not say a word. Those disciples had been very arrogant and proud before, but now they were crying as if their parents had died. Elder Master Tang and the Discipline Hall elder were full of anger, but they could only hold it in. When they heard Chu Huaishan's announcement, the two of them had no choice but to salute and say in a low voice, "Congratulations to your sect for winning. Our sect has lost. We will follow the rules and evacuate Dragon Mountain as soon as possible." The Tianjin sect had already lost miserably enough. The two elders could not act shamelessly. That would only be more humiliating. They just wanted to leave the dragon viewing platform as soon as possible to avoid being ridiculed by the people of the Sky Pillar sect. At this point, this year's Dragon Mountain tournament was finally over. Ji Tianqing walked back into the crowd with an indifferent expression. He was surrounded by several disciples of the Wind Cloud Hall, as if he was the moon surrounded by stars. The deacon of the Tianjin sect rushed to the field and took Hang Chen, who was lying unconscious in the big pit, away. Then he rushed back to the Tianjin sect. With Hang Chen's severe injuries, if they were not treated in time, his life would be in danger. After a while, the people of the Tianjin sect left the dragon viewing platform one after another. When the two elders and deacons left, they didn't even say goodbye to the Sky Pillar sect. Clearly, they were extremely angry and disappointed. However, the people from the Sky Pillar sect were not in a hurry to leave. They continued to discuss on the dragon viewing platform for a long time. Han Xiaoxing walked to Ji Tianqing's side and said with a gratified smile, "Ji Tianqing, well done. Today, you have indeed created a miracle and defeated Hang Chen. You have truly brought honor to our dean. News of your battle with Hang Chen will definitely spread throughout the ancient realm of the stars and reach the ears of all major sects." After he finished speaking, he looked at the disciples of the Storm Hall. "Are you very envious of Ji Tianqing? Are you also fantasizing that one day you can be like him and make contributions to our sect and become famous in the ancient realm of the stars?" The disciples nodded one after another, their faces full of expectation and longing. Han Xiaoxing smiled and said earnestly, "I believe you have also seen that with Ji Tianqing's strength, he was not Hang Chen's opponent. So how did he defeat Hang Chen? It is because he is calm and wise. He knows how to use his strengths and advantages to combine the Array Dao and the Martial Dao to continuously weaken Hang Chen's strength. In the end, he defeated Hang Chen. In the past 2 months, I have often taught you to learn and apply it flexibly. You should see more and think more. Studying the Alchemy Dao and the Array Dao will also be of great benefit to your Martial Dao. Today, you have all seen that Ji Tianqing did this. Therefore, he created a miracle and defeated Hang Chen. If you can also be like Ji Tianqing, I believe that one day you will also become true geniuses and make a name for our sect. Han Xiaoxing's words immediately made the disciples' blood boil and they couldn't help but applaud. 2 months ago, when Han Xiaoxing said these words to them, they didn't have much of a deep feeling. At this moment, Ji Tianqing's performance proved this truth. Only then did the disciples truly understand and comprehend Han Xiaoxing's intentions. The martial Tao was the foundation of one's life. It was extremely important. Although the alchemy Tao and the array Tao were auxiliary studies, if they were thoroughly studied and used reasonably, it would also make everyone's martial Tao strength more powerful. Today's battle between Ji Tianqing and Hang Chen also gave the disciples of the Storm Hall a vivid lesson. Everyone's eyes gathered on Ji Tianqing. They regarded him as a great hero, a top genius, and the pride of the Storm Hall. As for Lu Mingyang, he stood in the crowd and was completely forgotten. No one paid attention to him, and no one blamed him. Everyone ignored him. He silently looked at Ji Tianqing, his heart filled with unwillingness and jealousy. His expression was very ugly. However, he had personally seen how Ji Tianqing defeated Hang Chen and was very impressed by Ji Tianqing's strength. He had to admit that Ji Tianqing was indeed a genius with courage and wisdom. He was qualified to receive such an honor. Whether it was courage, wisdom, or strength, Ji Tianqing could crush him. What qualifications did he have to be dissatisfied with Ji Tianqing? After a long time, everyone quieted down. Han Xiaoxing and Du Wu led the 9 disciples down the mountain and rode their chasing wind horses back to the Sky Pillar sect. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, was given special treatment. He was given the treatment that only those who had rendered meritorious service would receive. Chu Huaishan brought him on a spirit bird and flew high in the sky towards the Sky Pillar sect. In the Sky Pillar sect, Sect Master Chu Tianqing lived in the palace. He was sitting cross-legged in a secret room with an ancient bronze chessboard in front of him. Although there were crisscrossing lines on the chessboard, there were no chess pieces. Instead, there were some kind of array pattern. The chessboard lit up with white light and condensed into a white screen that looked like a mirror. The image in the mirror was the dragon viewing platform at the peak of Dragon Mountain. This bronze chessboard was called the Heaven Reading Disc. Like the star chart, it was a powerful heaven origin artifact. It was one of the many secret treasures of the Sky Pillar sect. Chu Tianqing sat in the secret room and used the Heaven Reading Disc to pay attention to the dragon viewing platform hundreds of miles away. He could see the situation of the Dragon Mountain tournament. Now that the Dragon Mountain tournament was over, the 2 sects had left. Chu Tianqing frowned and pondered for a moment before revealing a gratified smile and putting away the Heaven Reading Disc. Ji Tianqing, oh Ji Tianqing, I really didn't misjudge you. You are indeed the person shown by the star chart. Your wisdom and talent are on par with Yunyao. As long as I continue to secretly nurture you, you will become a genius on par with Yunyao sooner or later. Our sect is lucky to have a genius like Yunyao. Now we have another Ji Tianqing. God bless our Sky Pillar sect. Today's update will continue. It's a new week. Please recommend me. Chapter 201. In the vast mountain range thousands of miles away from the Dragon Mountain, there was a desolate mountain peak. Inside the mountain peak was the Demon's Cave. Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, and the others had entered this place before. Inside the Demon's Cave, there was a dark and cold secret room. The Blood Moon Infanta and the High Priest stood in the room, staring at a mirror on the wall. It was a 2-meter-tall oval-shaped mirror made of blood-red crystal. It contained a miraculous array formation and magic power. This was a powerful artifact of the demon race. Like the High Priest's smoke net umbrella, it was a heavenly origin-grade artifact. A slightly blurry image appeared in the mirror, showing the scene of the dragon viewing platform. The Dragon Mountain tournament had ended, and the Blood Moon Infanta and the High Priest had watched it for more than 2 hours. The two of them watched the entire Dragon Mountain Grand Tournament and witnessed Ji Tianqing defeat Hang Chen with their own eyes. Both of them were silent. Their eyes flickered with a dense cold light, causing the temperature in the room to become even colder. After a long time, the High Priest opened his mouth and said with a hoarse voice, "In my opinion, the previous Dragon Mountain Tournament was just a small fight between the Tianjian sect and the Sky Pillar sect. This time, Ji Tianqing's participation in the Dragon Mountain Grand Competition has indeed made it extremely exciting. To be able to see that kid's strength and trump card, it was worth it for me to use more than a dozen spirit stones to activate the demonic mirror." The Blood Moon Infanta said in a deep voice, "High Priest, you already guessed that kid's talent was extraordinary and would become a big problem for us in the future. That's why you paid so much attention to him, right?" The High Priest nodded and said in a deep voice, "That's right. There's something strange about that kid. In just a short month, he actually reached the Mystic Comprehending Realm and defeated an expert at the 5th stage of the Mystic Comprehending Realm. It's really unbelievable." The Blood Moon Infanta frowned and said in a low voice, "Back then, you detected the aura of the heavenly star bead in his body. Now, it seems that his monstrous talent is most likely related to the heavenly star bead. I only hate that I didn't kill him back then and allowed him to grow to such a level. If he's given a few more years, I'm afraid he'll grow to the point where he can stand shoulder to shoulder with me." The High Priest sneered and said coldly, "So what? We only need to keep a close eye on him, and we'll be able to obtain clues and the whereabouts of the heavenly star bead from him." "That's good too." The Blood Moon Infanta nodded and said in an awe-inspiring tone, "For the sake of the heavenly star bead and the revival of our race, let him live for a few more days." The High Priest was silent. He frowned and pondered for a while before talking about another topic. "Dragon Mountain is just an ordinary treasure land. Even I am not interested in it. In the ancient realm of the stars, there are many places with spirit veins like this. Now, the Tianjian sect is wantonly excavating Longshan. It's almost emptied. Why would the two strongest sects in the star ancient realm fight so fiercely over this spiritual vein that is about to be abandoned? Especially the Tianjian sect. It seems that they are determined to win this Longshan competition. Is a hollowed-out abandoned mountain worth their unscrupulous fight?" Hearing this, the Blood Moon Infanta frowned and pondered. After a while, she asked tentatively, "High Priest, do you mean that there might be some secrets or treasures hidden in Dragon Mountain that the Tianjian sect is so reluctant to part with?" "That's right. I have this suspicion." The High Priest's face was solemn, and his eyes were shining brightly. "However, this is only my guess. As for the exact reason, we still need to investigate before we can know." He thought for a while and said to the Blood Moon Infanta, "Infanta, take some people to the Tianjian sect. It's best if you can capture a disciple who is participating in the competition. When the time comes, I will interrogate him and see what the Tianjian sect is trying to do." "Okay, I'll go right away." The Blood Moon Infanta cupped her hands and left the secret room to carry out her mission. After returning to the sky-bearing sect, Chu Huaishan rode his spirit bird and landed outside the gate of the Fengyun courtyard. He saw that Ji Tianqing was very weak and had suffered heavy injuries, so he asked Ji Tianqing to go back to the Fengyun courtyard to treat his injuries first. "Ji Tianqing, go back to the Fengyun courtyard and recuperate. You have made a great contribution to the sect this time. I will go to the sect leader later and ask for a reward for you. I believe that the sect leader will reward you personally after you finish recuperating." Ji Tianqing smiled and cupped his hands. "Thank you, Elder Chu. I will take my leave now." After saying goodbye to Chu Huaishan, he returned to the Fengyun courtyard. After returning to his room, he quickly took out medicinal powder and white cloth from his 100 treasures brocade pouch to treat his injuries. Others only knew that he had defeated Hang Chen in public and created a miracle, but they didn't know how much effort he had put in to create this miracle. In order to defeat Hang Chen, he had done his best and used almost all of his abilities and trump cards. Before the competition began, he had already learned about Hang Chen's background. He knew that Hang Chen's martial strength was strong, but his talent in formations was very slow, so he used a sword formation in the competition. Even so, he was still unable to defeat Hang Chen and was even injured by Hang Chen, leaving several hideous wounds on his body. In the end, he was forced to use his trump card, the sword embryo, to completely defeat Hang Chen. Hang Chen was seriously injured and unconscious. His injuries were very miserable. However, Ji Tianqing didn't have it easy either. After using the sword embryo, he had consumed 80% of his true origin, and his strength was extremely weak. Even the sword embryo had become dim and dull, no longer showing its sharpness. His vitality was also greatly damaged. Fortunately, everything was over. He had won back Dragon Mountain for the Sky Pillar sect, so he would definitely be heavily nurtured by the sect. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing's pale face revealed a smile. There is no honor or treatment that can be obtained without sowing. I need to fight for it myself. Only by becoming stronger and showing my value to the sect can I be valued by the sect. Fortunately, I succeeded. Now, it can be considered that the clouds have parted and the moon has seen the light. I can finally cultivate in peace and continue to increase my strength. Muttering a few words in a low voice, Ji Tianqing started to circulate his energy to heal his injuries, recovering his weak physical strength and true origin. Unknowingly, a day passed. At dawn the next day, Ji Tianqing's injuries were no longer serious, and his complexion also returned to normal. Following this, he still needed to meditate and recuperate for half a month before he could recover to his peak state. And at this time, the news of the victory in the Dragon Mountain competition had already spread in the Sky Pillar sect. Not only the outer court disciples, but even the inner court disciples, many deacons, and elders knew the news of the competition's victory. The disciples of the Wind Cloud Hall even publicized the process of the competition, describing the battle between Ji Tianqing and Hang Chen as brilliant, full of ups and downs, and very gripping. Very soon, Ji Tianqing and Hang Chen's peak battle spread in the Sky Pillar sect, causing countless disciples to be shocked and discuss. Chapter 202. Early in the morning, Ji Tianqing finished his cultivation. He turned his head to look out the window and found that the sun had yet to rise. It was drizzling outside the window. The pitter-patter of rain fell on the leaves, making a rustling sound. Ji Tianqing walked to the window, opened it, and breathed in the fresh air. After entering the sect for so long, the sun has been shining brightly almost every day. It's rare to encounter rain, this is interesting. He whispered, and the corners of his mouth hooked up into a smile. At this time, he suddenly saw a graceful figure at the entrance of the Tempest courtyard. She was holding a light green paper umbrella, and her footsteps were light as she walked into the courtyard. The graceful figure wearing a long green dress was clearly a young girl. Although the paper umbrella covered the girl's face, Ji Tianqing felt that her graceful figure was somewhat familiar. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, and thought to himself, that young girl holding an umbrella came to the Tempest courtyard early in the morning. Who could she be? At this time, the door to a room opposite Ji Tianqing's room suddenly opened. Lu Mingyang, wearing a green robe, walked out with a face full of surprise and excitement. He quickly walked towards the young girl holding the umbrella. He strode in front of the young girl and blocked her path. He said with a heart full of joy, "Junior Xian, why have you come to the Tempest courtyard? It's still raining outside. If you're looking for me, you can send me a message, and I'll personally come to see you." Lu Mingyang's mood was too pleasantly surprised. Once he opened his mouth, a long string of words came out. The gentleness and adoration in his eyes couldn't be concealed. The young girl holding the umbrella was Xian. She slightly raised the paper umbrella and glanced at Lu Mingyang, who was blocking in front of her. "I'm sorry, I'm not looking for you. Please move aside. Xian's expression was calm, and her tone was indifferent. She then walked around Lu Mingyang and walked towards Ji Tianqing's room. Lu Mingyang was immediately stunned, and the pleasantly surprised expression on his face instantly froze. He stood there awkwardly in the drizzle. Looking at Xian's back, his heart was full of disappointment. When he saw Xian walking towards Ji Tianqing's room, his face immediately turned gloomy and his eyes flashed with hatred. Xian nimbly walked under the eaves and put away the paper umbrella. As soon as she raised her head, she saw Ji Tianqing standing by the window, looking at her with a smile. Xian was startled for a moment before a gentle smile appeared on her pretty face. Her voice was gentle as she said, "Tianqing, you're already up. It seems that I've come at the right time." Ji Tianqing of course understood that Xian was looking for him. He quickly opened the door and welcomed Xian into the room. After Xian sat down, he glanced at Lu Mingyang in the courtyard and closed the window. "Junior sister Xian, it's raining today. Why did you personally come to the Tempest courtyard to find me?" Xian nodded and revealed an extremely beautiful smile. "Last night, I heard grandfather talk about the Dragon Mountain tournament. Only then did I know that you took back the Dragon Mountain for our sect and even got injured. Last night, I wanted to come and see you, but it was too late. I guessed that you must be recuperating, so I didn't disturb you. Today, I came not only to congratulate you on your victory, but also to bring you some healing pills. You will definitely need them." After saying this, she took out a small white jade bottle from her ring and placed it in front of Ji Tianqing. "Here are 2 Tai Ching pills. Their healing effects are comparable to Jade Dew pills. I personally refined them." Ji Tianqing knew that Xian's grandfather was the Great Elder. Yesterday, he personally supervised the tournament on the dragon viewing platform. He originally wanted to decline, but he couldn't resist Xian's insistence. He also couldn't bear to refuse Xian's kind intentions, so he accepted the bottle. It just so happened that he had used up all his cultivation resources, so he didn't even have a single healing pill. Xian sent 2 pills early in the morning, which solved his urgent need. "Junior sister Xian, thank you." Ji Tianqing sincerely thanked her. Xian smiled and nodded. She chatted with him for a while, telling him to focus on recuperating. After a quarter of an hour, Xian said her goodbyes and left. When Ji Tianqing sent her out of the room, he saw that Lu Mingyang was still standing in the courtyard. Although Lu Mingyang's entire body was soaked from the rain, he didn't feel it at all. He was still coldly staring at him. Ji Tianqing was too lazy to pay attention to him. He waved goodbye to Xian and watched Xian leave the storm courtyard. Only then did he turn around and return to his room. Not long after, just as he was about to take the Tai Ching pill to heal his injuries, there was a knock on the door. "Big brother Tianqing, are you there?" Following the knock on the door, Ji Ku's voice, which was filled with concern, entered the room. Ji Tianqing hurriedly put away the Tai Ching pill and opened the door. He saw Ji Ku standing outside the door. She was still wearing a long green dress, but it was changed to the special style of the spiritual medicine hall's disciples. Moreover, she didn't bring a paper umbrella, so her hair and dress were all wet. The thin dress clung to her body, revealing her graceful and moving curves. He could faintly see a large area of white and tender skin. Ji Tianqing hurriedly pulled her into the room and said with a somewhat reproachful tone, "Cuckoo, you silly girl. The spiritual medicine hall is more than 10 miles away from the spiritual medicine hall. Why didn't you bring a paper umbrella?" Although he said that, he had already found a clean handkerchief and helped Ji Ku wipe the rain from her body and face. Ji Ku didn't care about the rain at all. She even liked Ji Tianqing's protective action of helping her wipe her face. Her charming face revealed a smile and she hurriedly explained, "Big brother Tianqing, I was in a hurry to deliver the medicine to you. Therefore, I forgot to bring an umbrella when I went out." Ji Tianqing wasn't surprised by Ji Ku's occasionally muddle-headed personality. After helping Ji Ku wipe the rain, he sat down with her to talk. After the two of them chatted for a while, Ji Ku took out 3 jade bottles from her sleeve and placed them in front of Ji Tianqing. She introduced them to Ji Tianqing as if she was very familiar with them. "Big brother Tianqing, these are the pills that the spiritual medicine elder asked me to deliver to you. These pills are mysterious dragon pills. They are specially used to treat sword wounds. There are a total of 3 pills. Take one every 2 days. These are extreme blood pills. They are used to treat internal injuries. There are a total of 6 pills. Take one every night, these are recovery pills. There are a total of 12 pills. They can help you quickly recover your true essence." Hearing Ji Ku skillfully introduce the 3 pills, Ji Tianqing revealed a gratified smile. It seemed that Ji Ku had only been a disciple of the spiritual medicine hall for a few days, but she had already learned a lot. Ji Tianqing accepted the pills with a smile and remembered Ji Ku's advice. The two of them chatted for a while. Ji Tianqing finally felt relieved when he learned that Ji Ku was well taken care of in the spiritual medicine hall and that everything was going smoothly. After a quarter of an hour, Ji Ku said goodbye and left. When Ji Tianqing sent Ji Ku out, he saw Lu Mingyang still standing in the courtyard in the rain with a dazed look. Not long after he returned to his room, there was a knock on the door. Hearing the knock, Ji Tianqing shook his head with a bitter smile and whispered, "What's going on today? It's clearly raining. Why are they looking for me one after another?" When he opened the door, he saw a beautiful woman in a white dress standing at the door. Chapter 203. Without a doubt, this beautiful woman in a long white dress was Yun Yao. Although she didn't bring a paper umbrella and seemed to have come to the storm courtyard in the rain, there was no trace of rain on her face. However, there was not the slightest trace of rain on her body. Her temperament was as cold and otherworldly as before, like a fairy who did not eat the food of mortals. Since she was a fairy from the 9th heaven, how could her clothes be drenched by the rain? "Eldest senior sister, why are you here?" Ji Tianqing greeted Yun Yao with a smile and welcomed Yun Yao into the room. "I'm here to see you." Yun Yao nodded slightly and stepped into the room. After sitting down, she looked at Ji Tianqing with concern and asked, "How are your injuries?" Ji Tianqing waved his hand and explained, "They're only minor injuries. I'll recover after 2 days of rest." Yun Yao nodded and took out 2 things from her ring, placing them in front of Ji Tianqing. These 2 things were a black ring and a small white jade bottle. Yun Yao explained to him, "The sect leader already knows about the Longshan tournament and is very satisfied with your performance. The sect leader asked me to bring these 2 things to you. Take them." Ji Tianqing looked at the black ring and the small white jade bottle and asked doubtfully, "There must be pills in the bottle." "I know that. But, eldest senior sister, what kind of treasure is this ring?" Yun Yao explained to him, "This is a top-grade profound-level treasure, a space ring. There's a small space in the ring that can store daily necessities." Ji Tianqing understood as soon as he heard this. The effect of this thing was basically the same as his 100 treasures pouch. He already had a 100 treasures pouch and didn't need a space ring. However, Yun Yao persuaded him, "Junior brother Tianqing, although this space ring is exquisite, it's not a particularly rare treasure. The elders, deacons, and elite disciples all have them. Furthermore, the sect leader specially asked me to give this to you. You must accept it." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "In that case, I'll accept it. Thank you, senior sister." Yun Yao warned again, "There are 2 dew pills in that jade bottle. They can help you quickly recover your injuries and true essence. You should be able to use them. The competition has just ended, and the Tianjian sect is in the process of handing over some things to the Tianjian sect. You should focus on recuperating for the next few days." Ji Tianqing accepted the interspatial ring and the white jade bottle before chatting with her for a while. After a while, Yunyao got up and left. When Ji Tianqing sent her off, Lu Mingyang finally did not continue to stand in the courtyard in the rain. For the next few hours, Ji Tianqing wanted to take medicinal pills to heal himself, but he was unable to do so. Every once in a while, someone would knock on the door and visit with gifts. Most of these people were disciples of the Storm Hall. Everyone was full of admiration for Ji Tianqing. They came to check on his injuries and gave him some medicinal pills and gifts, taking the opportunity to get closer to him. After all, everyone knew that Ji Tianqing was now an influential figure in the outer sect. He was a hero of the Sky Pillar sect, and his future was limitless. What Ji Tianqing didn't expect was that after he sent away 6 or 7 disciples, Emo and Shi Jingqing also came knocking on the door with gifts. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Shi Jingqing and Emo standing outside, looking at him with a smile. "Senior Marshal Brother Ji, we've come to see you. Senior Marshal Brother Ji, we took the liberty to disturb you. Please don't take offense." Seeing their smiling faces, Ji Tianqing couldn't treat them coldly, so he led them into the room. After entering the room, the two didn't even sit down before they simultaneously cupped their hands and bowed to Ji Tianqing. They said in a sincere tone, "Senior Marshal Brother Ji, we came here today mainly to see how your injuries are. In addition, we also want to take this opportunity to apologize to you for the mistakes we made in the past. When we first entered the Storm Hall, we weren't familiar with each other, so there were many misunderstandings and some unpleasant quarrels. At that time, we were short-sighted and repeatedly criticized Senior Marshal Brother Ji. Now, every time we recall those words, we feel ashamed and uneasy." The two's expressions didn't seem to be fake at all. Their sincere apologies surprised Ji Tianqing. However, he didn't show it on his face. He faintly smiled and said, "We're all disciples of the same sect, and we're all geniuses of our respective countries. It's normal for us to be arrogant and conceited." Emo and Shi Jingqing repeatedly nodded and said, "That's right. In the past, we were all famous young geniuses in our respective countries. We considered everyone beneath our notice and were used to being arrogant. Now that we've entered the sect, we've seen the true world of martial arts. Our horizons have been broadened, and we've realized that there is always a mountain higher than the other. We've realized how laughable our conceit was. Senior Marshal Brother Ji, please don't take our previous arrogant words to heart. Please don't lower yourself to our level." Ji Tianqing could tell that after what had happened at the Dragon Mountain tournament, the two of them truly admired him. However, the more important reason was that the two knew that he would definitely rise in the future and become a disciple that the sect would focus on cultivating. Under these circumstances, the two were definitely worried that he would retaliate or suppress them afterwards. Therefore, the two hurriedly came to apologize, hoping to bury the hatchet and reconcile. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but reveal a faint smile. He was somewhat moved in his heart. After all, we were born in a world of martial arts where the strong prey on the weak. The strong are like dragons, and the weak are like ants. No matter whether it's changing the rudder according to the wind or seeking advantages and avoiding disadvantages, everyone will despise the weak and respect the strong. What a realistic human nature. Ji Tianqing was not a narrow-minded person. Of course, he wouldn't harp on those trivial matters. Emo and Shi Jingqing didn't have any deep hatred for him. It was just a verbal dispute. Since the two of them had come to his door to apologize, and their attitude was very sincere, he just laughed it off and threw all the old grudges to the back of his mind. "Junior Marshal brothers, don't worry about anything. In the future, we'll still be brothers in the same sect. We'll still have to take care of each other in times of danger. As for those trivial matters before, I won't take them to heart." Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, Shi Jingqing and Emo both smiled. They were finally relieved. The two chatted with Ji Tianqing for a while. They each gave him a few spiritual fruits and elixirs before leaving. Ji Tianqing sent the two away and sat in the room for a while. At noon, when no one came to visit, he entered the secret room. He first took out the space ring that Yunyao gave him. After playing with it for a while, he figured out how to use the ring. The space in this space ring was the same as the space in the 100 treasures brocade pouch. They were both as big as a room. In contrast, the space ring was more convenient to carry around than the 100 treasures brocade pouch. Therefore, Ji Tianqing used his soul sense to refine the space ring. Then, he put the ring on his hand. He stored the elixirs and gifts that everyone gave him in the space ring. It was convenient for him to use them at any time. As for the little ice fox and the little black dragon, they were still in the 100 treasures brocade pouch. In the future, the pouch would only be their nest. Chapter 204. After sacrificing the spatial ring, Ji Tianqing sat in the spirit gathering array and started to heal his injuries. In the morning, everyone gave him countless medicinal pills, enough for him to go into seclusion to heal his injuries for a month. And among the medicinal pills that everyone gave, the Jade Dew pill and Extreme Clear pill were obviously of the highest grade and had the best effects. Ji Tianqing took the 2 Extreme Clear pills that Xian Xian gave him and started to refine the medicinal power to heal his injuries. The light in the secret room was dim and he couldn't see the changes in the sky outside. Time also seemed to pass faster. Under the catalysis of his true essence, the Extreme Clear pill turned into a gentle and majestic medicinal power, like a calmly flowing river, flowing endlessly into his meridians and limbs. As he refined and absorbed the medicinal power, he secretly sighed in his heart. Xian Xian's attainments in alchemy must be extraordinary to be able to refine such a powerful Extreme Clear pill. In terms of the healing effect of medicinal pills, the Extreme Clear pill was not inferior to the Jade Dew pill refined by the Spirit Medicine Hall. Time flew by quickly and Ji Tianqing's injuries were also quickly recovering. His true essence was also quickly recovering. The dim sword embryo in his body also became brighter and brighter, recovering its strength. 3 days later, he refined the medicinal power of the 2 Extreme Clear pills. His injuries were basically healed and his strength was also recovered by 50%. Next, Ji Tianqing took another 2 Jade Dew pills and continued to cultivate. Another 3 days passed and his strength finally recovered to its peak. However, the medicinal power of the Jade Dew pill still remained and was still majestic and surging. Ji Tianqing continued to cultivate, using the medicinal power of the Jade Dew pill to try to refine the first aperture point of the first main meridian. The 4th level of the path of the sword required him to refine the 72 aperture points of the 9 main meridians. Once the 8 aperture points of each main meridian were completely refined, his strength would correspondingly increase by 1 level. Tempering the acupoints was much more difficult than tempering the meridians. It required greater endurance and willpower, as well as more meticulous control of true essence. Ji Tianqing cultivated unhurriedly and tried little by little, constantly exploring and accumulating experience. With the help of the Jade Dew pill's medicinal power, he still spent a day before he finished refining the first acupoint. However, after the first acupoint was successfully refined, the increase in his strength was negligible. However, he had succeeded in taking the first step and accumulated some experience in refining acupoints. He was excited and gratified. Phew, Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation, exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and opened his eyes. Originally, I would have needed to recuperate for half a month to recover. However, with the pills that Xian Xian and eldest senior sister gave me, I only needed 7 days to recover. He smiled, got up, and walked out of the secret room. When he returned to his room, he saw the sun shining brightly outside the window. It was morning. Ever since I went on a mission with eldest senior sister, I haven't been to Great and Palace in so many days. I wonder if that stinky old man will blame me. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing left the Tempest courtyard and rushed towards the Great Peace Palace. 15 minutes later, he reached the gates of Great Peace Palace. He greeted the sword servant guarding the gates and entered the Great Peace Palace, heading straight for the 3rd courtyard. When he entered the third courtyard, he saw Xiang Wuji carrying a white jade water bottle, watering the medicinal plants in the nursery. Those medicinal plants had already grown to a foot tall, the leaves were crisp and green, emitting a rich vitality and fragrance. Xiang Wuji was watering as he hummed a little tune, seeming to be in a good mood. Ji Tianqing walked to his side, cupped his hands and bowed, "Senior, Junior has come to see you." Xiang Wuji didn't even turn his head as he continued to water, curling his lips and said, "You haven't come for almost a month, I thought you weren't coming. Why did you think of coming to see this old man today?" Ji Tianqing smiled and explained, "Senior, in this period of time, Junior had too many things to do. Not only did I have to help eldest senior sister with her mission, I also had to prepare for the Dragon Mountain tournament." Before he could finish, Xiang Wuji waved his hand and interrupted him, all right, what's there to explain? How could this old man not know what you've been doing in this period of time?" Xiang Wuji's tone was a bit impatient. It seemed that he knew Ji Tianqing's movements like the back of his hand. Ji Tianqing understood his temperament, so he didn't feel awkward at all. He just smiled silently. At this time, Xiang Wuji smacked his lips, revealing a rare gratified smile. "You did well in the Dragon Mountain tournament, you've made our sky-bearing sect proud." Xiang Wuji didn't praise people easily. Ji Tianqing had known him for so long, but he hadn't been praised many times. For him to say this, it was clear that he was very satisfied and gratified. Ji Tianqing smiled and said a few modest words, then went to find a broom and a bamboo basket to clean the courtyard. Xiang Wuji turned his head to look at him, frowning and asking, "Are you addicted to sweeping? Put down the things, you don't need to sweep today. Come, use the flying star sword art. This old man wants to see how you're doing." With that, he put away the water bottle and looked at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze. Ji Tianqing did as he was told. He hurriedly walked to the center of the courtyard and used the 1,000-feather blade. He released 9 1-meter-long golden sword lights and stabbed over 1,000 times in 5 breaths of time, causing the courtyard to flicker with sword lights and sword qi. After Xiang Wuji finished watching, he revealed a mocking smile. "You really know how to take advantage of the situation. What this old man taught you was to use 3 sword lights to stab over 1,000 times in 5 breaths of time, but you used 9 sword lights." Ji Tianqing smiled and explained, "This junior's strength is low, so of course I'm not as strong as seniors. Of course, this junior is working hard to be like you one day, using 3 sword lights to stab over 1,000 times in 5 breaths of time." Xiang Wuji nodded and said, "All right, use the second move." Ji Tianqing released 2 more sword lights and slashed at the ground 10 meters away. The sword lights and the wind gathered into a golden thunderbolt and hit the bluestone ground hard, creating a big hole in the ground and splashing out countless stones. Xiang Wuji immediately frowned and scolded, "You brat! Do you want to destroy this old man's courtyard? Later, you will clean the courtyard for this old man and fill up the hole." Ji Tianqing had expected this, so he was not surprised. He just smiled and nodded. "Senior, how is my practice of these 2 moves?" Xiang Wuji stroked his white beard and nodded, "Not bad, barely qualified. Today, this old man will teach you the 3rd move of the flying star sword art. Open your eyes wide and watch." With that, he walked to the center of the courtyard and waved his hands to make a special gesture. He drew out a mysterious path and activated his vital core. The next moment, he put his palms together in front of him and pushed forward. Red Dragon Flash. A 2-meter-long sword ray that was as red as fire shot out from his palms and charged forward at a speed faster than lightning. When the red fire sword light stabbed forward, it created a surging wave of fire like a lifelike fire dragon. The power of the sword light was extremely terrifying. The entire courtyard was filled with sword qi and cracks appeared on the ground. The air became extremely hot as if it had been ignited. Boom! With a flash of the red fire dragon, the sword light shot 50 meters away, crossed the courtyard wall and hit a towering tree outside the courtyard. That tree was hundreds of years old and its trunk was as thick as a water tank. Its lush branches and leaves covered an area of 30 meters, almost covering the entire courtyard. However, the crimson dragon's flames instantly broke the tree in half. The dense leaves and branches were also covered by the monstrous flames and were instantly burned to ashes. There will be a 6th update at 20 p.m. Looking for a few recommendation tickets. Chapter 205. Ji Tianqing stared blankly at the towering tree outside the courtyard, his heart filled with shock. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would have found it hard to believe that a towering ancient tree as thick as a water tank could be smashed into pieces and burned into charcoal from dozens of meters away. What kind of destructive power was this? Was this still considered a sword art? Xiang Wuji casually executed the red dragon flash and turned to look at him. He said calmly, "Kid, did you see it clearly?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "I've seen it clearly, but I'd like to ask Senior to explain the circulation route and force exertion method of this sword technique." On the surface, the power of Scarlet Dragon Flash was indeed terrifying. However, the method and route to use this move were extremely complicated. Xiang Wuji explained it to Ji Tianqing in detail, and Ji Tianqing was able to comprehend the crux of it. He understood the essence of this sword technique. He frowned and thought for a while. Then he said to Xiang Wuji, "Senior, when you taught me this sword art, you used green wood elemental vital energy. Why were you able to use fire elemental vital energy just now?" "You're stupid." Xiang Wuji stared at him and said, "When a martial artist reaches the sky origin realm, he can gather the power of the 5 elements and use the 5 elemental vital energy at will. Experts of this realm can fly in the sky and burrow into the ground. They can also tread on water and tread on fire, moving unhindered between heaven and earth. When I executed the red dragon flash just now, I only used 10% of my power. If I used all my power to execute the red dragon flash, the red dragon flash would be 100 meters long and could destroy a small mountain." Ji Tianqing didn't know much about the sky origin realm. After all, this realm was too profound. It was just a legend to him. Hearing Xiang Wuji's explanation, he was not only shocked, but also looked forward to it. Of course, he finally understood Xiang Wuji's power. He was the legendary sky origin realm martial artist. He looked confused and asked again, "Senior, you already control the power of the 5 elements and can control fire elemental vital energy. Of course you can execute the red dragon flash. But I'm only in the ethereal realm and my natal vital energy is of the metal element. How can I practice the red dragon flash?" This question made Xiang Wuji frown. He was hesitant. After thinking for a while, he explained, "This is a problem. I was careless. The first 2 moves of the Flying Star sword art that I created can only be used by martial artists of the Origin Core realm. This red dragon flash can only be used by martial artists of the Sky Origin realm. But since you understand the essence of the red dragon flash, you can practice this sword art. Even if you don't have fire elemental vital energy, you can replace it with metal elemental vital energy. The sword art is a sword arts, a sword art is a sword art is a sword art is a sword arts. You should practice it first. Once you reach the sky origin stage, you will be able to unleash its full potential." Hearing Xiang Wuji's words, Ji Tianqing understood what was going on and hurriedly cupped his hands in thanks. Next, he practiced Estes Flash. The first time he used the red dragon flash, he successfully channeled his vital energy and released a 2-meter-long golden sword radiance. The golden sword radiance emitted a faint outline of a divine dragon. Even though it was not as majestic as Xiang Wuji's red dragon flash, it was still domineering. Boom! Amidst the muffled sound, the golden dragon-shaped sword light flew out 20 meters and hit the bluestone wall of the courtyard. The wall immediately caved in, and a few cracks appeared on it. Xiang Wuji felt a little heartache, but he was still pleased. He smiled in satisfaction. "Huh, you're not bad. You managed to use the red dragon flash on your first try. However, this old man used the scarlet dragon flash, while yours can only be called the golden snake flash. Kid, you still have to work hard and practice diligently." Ji Tianqing naturally understood that it was his first time practicing the scarlet dragon flash, yet he was able to achieve such an effect. How astonishing was that? Xiang Wuji mocked him because he was afraid that he would become arrogant. He practiced a few more times and listened to Xiang Wuji's guidance. His understanding of red dragon flash deepened, and he was at the beginning. Unknowingly, it was already afternoon. Xiang Wuji was going to take his afternoon nap again. Ji Tianqing bid farewell and left. After returning to Towering Sky Peak, he went to the outer sect's chores yard. He explained the situation to the chores yard's deacon and asked the chores yard to send a few chores yard workers to the Grand Peace Palace to repair the old man's yard and walls. After all, he was not good at this kind of stone and wood construction work. It was usually done by the chores yard. After explaining this matter, he returned to the storm yard. Just as he entered the yard, he saw a few disciples standing under the banyan tree in the yard. They were discussing something in low voices. He did not pay them any attention and walked straight to his room. Just as he walked to the door, Nia Hao next door opened the door and greeted him. "Brother Ji, how are your injuries? I've been in seclusion for a few days. I'm completely healed now. Thank you for your concern." Ji Tianqing nodded and smiled at him. Nia Hao looked at the disciples under the banyan tree and said to Ji Tianqing with a serious expression, "Brother Ji, there's something you might not know. Something happened at Dragon Mountain." "Dragon Mountain? Something happened?" Ji Tianqing frowned. His eyes revealed a trace of confusion. "We won the competition. It's been 7 days. The Tianjian sect should have returned Dragon Mountain to us. What could have happened?" Nia Hao explained with a serious expression, "The Tianjian sect kept their promise. They evacuated everyone within 2 days and returned Dragon Mountain. In the past few days, the deacons of the sect have brought a large number of chores yard workers to Dragon Mountain. They have begun to take over Dragon Mountain. However, just yesterday, a group of chores yard workers in charge of mining suddenly disappeared without a trace. No one knows if they're dead or alive." At this point, Nia Hao frowned. His tone was heavy. 10 odd job disciple disappeared right in front of everyone's eyes. Everyone suspects that the Tianjian sect did it. After all, they lost the competition. They must be holding a grudge. The news has already spread throughout the sect. Everyone at Dragon Mountain is in a state of panic. The chores yard workers don't dare to enter the mountain. I heard that the sect master was very angry when he heard the news. He sent senior sister Yunyao and the outer sect elders to investigate this matter. I just saw senior sister go to Elder Chu. She should be discussing this matter with Elder Chu right now." Ji Tianqing had a plan in his mind. He vaguely felt that this incident at Dragon Mountain would cause another storm. He frowned and thought for a moment. Then he turned and walked towards the door. Nia Hao was startled. He quickly asked, "Brother Ji, what are you doing?" "I'm going to see what's going on." Ji Tianqing quickly walked out of the storm courtyard and walked towards the palace where Chu Huaishan lived. Chapter 206. Ji Tianqing was now an influential figure in the outer sect, and with the Sky Pillar token, he could move freely within the Sky Pillar sect. He entered the palace where Chu Huaishan lived, and when he was still outside, he heard Chu Huaishan and Yun Yao's voices coming from inside the palace. Reporting to Elder Chu, disciple Ji Tianqing requests an audience, he reported as he cupped his hands at the entrance of the palace. Chu Huaishan was obviously startled, but he immediately said loudly, "Come in." Ji Tianqing stepped into the palace and saw 3 people inside. In addition to Yun Yao and Chu Huaishan, Han Qiusheng was also present. Seeing him arrive, Chu Huaishan asked in a concerned tone, "Ji Tianqing, have you recovered from your injuries?" Yun Yao and Han Qiusheng also looked at him, their eyes filled with concern. Ji Tianqing nodded and cupped his hands, "Thank you for your concern, Elder Chu. This disciple has been in seclusion for 7 days to recover from my injuries." "That's good," Chu Huaishan nodded slightly. "Do you have something to report? Or, do you need any cultivation resources?" Ji Tianqing hurriedly explained, "Elder Chu, this disciple heard that something had happened to Dragon Mountain, so I came to see if I could do anything to help." Chu Huaishan revealed a gratified smile, "That's good. Dragon Mountain originally belonged to the outer sect, and you are the role model of the outer sect disciples. Now that something has happened to Dragon Mountain, it is rare for you to take the initiative to share the burden of our sect." Han Qiusheng also nodded in agreement, as the saying goes, the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. "Ji Tianqing, since you took the initiative to care about this matter, you will definitely be able to take on great responsibilities in the future." Faced with Chu Huaishan and Han Qiusheng's praise, Ji Tianqing hurriedly said a few words of modesty. Next, Chu Huaishan and Yun Yao continued to discuss the matter of Dragon Mountain. Yun Yao said with a serious expression, "The news that has been circulating in the sect is that 10 odd job disciples who were mining the ore veins have gone missing. Actually, after what happened yesterday, the sect leader had already ordered the 2 deacons stationed at Dragon Mountain to personally investigate this matter. However, the 2 deacons have also gone missing. Even now, there is still no trace of them. No one knows if they are dead or alive." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing suddenly frowned, and his expression became dignified. If it was only 10 odd job disciples going missing, it was not a small matter, but it was not a big matter either. However, the 2 deacons who were stationed at Dragon Mountain had also disappeared. This matter had become very serious. But anyone that was able to assume the position of a deacon in the Sky Pillar sect required a strength at least at the first level of the Origin Core stage. There were very few Yuan Dan experts, and every single one of them was capable of assuming great responsibility. And after Long Shan's accident, 2 deacons went missing at once. To the Sky Pillar sect, this was not only a huge blow and loss, but also an intolerable provocation. If this was really the doing of the Tianjian sect, the Sky Pillar sect would definitely not swallow their anger. They would definitely seek justice. After that, Chu Huaishan introduced some information before and after the incident, allowing everyone to have a better understanding of Dragon Mountain's matter. After understanding Dragon Mountain's situation, Chu Huaishan and Yun Yao decided to set off and head to Dragon Mountain to conduct an on-site investigation. After all, they were still unable to make a conclusion based on the clues that they currently possessed. They were unable to determine who exactly did this. Seeing that Chu Huaishan and Yun Yao were about to set off, Ji Tianqing hurriedly said, "Elder Chu, this disciple requests to go with you. I can contribute a little to the sect." Chu Huaishan instantly frowned and was slightly hesitant. "Ji Tianqing, your injuries have just healed, so it's not suitable for you to go out. Moreover, there is something fishy about this matter. I'm afraid it's not a small risk." To him, Ji Tianqing was now the outer court's #1 genius, a future inner court's elite genius, and a cornerstone of the sect. He didn't want Ji Tianqing to take any risks. If anything happened to him, it would definitely be a heavy loss for the outer court. However, Yun Yao thought for a moment and nodded. "Elder Chu, junior brother Tianqing previously helped me complete the mission that the sect master gave him. He even received a reward from the sect master. Dragon Mountain is our sect's territory. This time, we're going to Dragon Mountain to investigate. It shouldn't be too dangerous. Let him come with us." Since Yun Yao had spoken, her words vaguely revealed the sect master's thoughts and intentions. Of course, Chu Huaishan wouldn't object. "That's good. Ji Tianqing is willing to share our worries. We can't refuse his kind intentions." Chu Huaishan nodded and led Ji Tianqing out of the main hall. Then, the three of them rode on their flying spirit beasts and flew high into the sky, rushing towards Dragon Mountain. Chu Huaishan rode on his own spirit beast, the fire bird, while Ji Tianqing and Yunyao rode on her spirit beast, the red-crowned crane. In less than 2 hours, the two spirit beasts flew 300 miles and landed on the peak of Dragon Mountain. The dragon viewing platform on the peak of the mountain was still the same as 8 days ago. The ground was still full of holes and cracks that no one repaired. Chu Huaishan led Ji Tianqing and Yunyao along the bluestone path halfway up the mountain. They wanted to enter the belly of the mountain to investigate. Ji Tianqing originally thought that after the Sky Pillar sect took back Dragon Mountain, they would definitely plant more herbs and rebuild the herb garden, restoring Dragon Mountain to its original beautiful appearance. However, along the way, he only saw a few teams of odd job workers opening up a few herb gardens on the mountain and planting some herbs that had a shorter growth period. Not long after, he followed Chu Huaishan into the cave halfway up the mountain and arrived at the depths of the mountain. When he arrived at the ore vein area, he saw that most of the odd job disciples were busy mining the ore vein. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown and ask Chu Huaishan, "Elder Chu, after our sect takes over Dragon Mountain, shouldn't we rebuild the herb garden and restore it to its original appearance?" Chu Huaishan smiled and explained, "Dragon Mountain has been damaged to this extent. If our sect wants to rebuild and repair it, not only will it consume a lot of manpower and financial resources, but it will also take at least 10 years. In these 10 years, there will be 3 more competitions on Dragon Mountain. Our sect may not be able to win every time. Once Dragon Mountain is taken away by the Tianjian sect, won't our sect's efforts to rebuild Dragon Mountain be taken advantage of by the Tianjian sect?" Ji Tianqing suddenly understood. No wonder the Sky Pillar sect didn't rebuild Dragon Mountain. He said with some worry, "Even if our sect doesn't spend any effort to rebuild Dragon Mountain, what's the difference between us and the Tianjian sect?" Chu Huaishan shook his head and said with a smile, "Of course there's a difference. The Tianjian sect recklessly excavates resources and wantonly destroys Dragon Mountain's spirit veins. Although our sect also excavates resources, we won't be as crazy as Dragon Mountain. Instead, we have a plan to excavate and protect Dragon Mountain to a certain extent. In addition, although Dragon Mountain is a land of treasured spirit veins, there are many such spirit veins in the Star Ancient Realm. Even if Dragon Mountain is completely destroyed one day, our sect can just find other spirit veins." After listening to Chu Huaishan's explanation, Ji Tianqing understood the Sky Pillar sect's attitude and didn't ask any more questions. At this time, Chu Huaishan also ordered him and Yunyao, "I'll go check out the other mining sites and meet with the deacon stationed at Dragon Mountain. You two go together and investigate the site of the incident. See if you can find any clues." Chapter 207. After parting ways with Chu Huaishan, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao continued their journey into the depths of the ore vein. The light in the mine was dim, and there was only one stone lantern every few dozen meters on the stone walls on both sides. The ground and the walls of the cave were made of dark brown rock, with layers of ores occasionally exposed in some areas. These ores were multicolored and contained the 5-element spirit qi, which could only be formed after thousands of years of growth. The craftsmen of the Sky Pillar sect's refining hall would refine the ores they mined, refining them into even purer 5-element spirit qi and materials to forge weapons and equipment. In addition, some gems would also appear in some areas of the ore vein with relatively high purity. These gems contained rich 5-element spirit qi, which could be used by martial artists for cultivation, setting up arrays, or refining tools. In short, ore veins were very important resources for the sect. In order to mine the ore veins under Dragon Mountain, the Sky Pillar sect had once dug hundreds of deep and serene mine tunnels. After the Tianjian sect took over Dragon Mountain, they began to excavate even more wantonly, increasing the number of mine tunnels to nearly 200 and going even deeper underground. The many mine tunnels were connected to each other, creating many intersections that were as complicated as a maze. Fortunately, Chu Huaishan had already given Yun Yao a map of the mine tunnels, so the two of them wouldn't get lost in the endless forks. After an hour, the two of them walked along the dark and winding mine tunnels for more than a dozen miles and finally arrived at the scene of the incident. This was the end of the mine tunnel, an open space with a radius of nearly 100 meters, like a spacious and dark hall. Layers of ores could be clearly seen on the walls of the cave. Between each layer of ores was a layer of rock that was 7 to 8 meters thick, while each layer of ores was more than 3 meters thick and was filled with multicolored ores. Yun Yao looked around and said in a deep voice, "At the time of the incident, a group of 10 odd job disciples were mining ores in this area." Ji Tianqing looked around for a while and saw many scattered ores, as well as several pickaxes and bamboo baskets, in the open space not far away. The bamboo baskets also contained a small amount of ores that were obviously newly mined. There were also a few traces of excavation on the ore layer on the rock wall. Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows and thought for a moment before probing. Although those 10 odd job disciples didn't enter the outer sect, they should all be at the second or third level of the true energy realm. At the time of the incident, they should have been scattered in this area mining. Even if an expert suddenly attacked, it was impossible to capture all of them in an instant without leaving any traces. Eldest senior sister, let's search carefully. We should be able to find some clues nearby. Yun Yao nodded in agreement with his analysis. The two of them spread out and began to investigate from both ends of the cave. Their eyes were sharp as they searched for traces. Not long after, Ji Tianqing discovered some clues and found many traces of fighting. On the rock walls and on the pickaxes thrown into the pile of ores, there were traces of swords and sabers. Yun Yao also made the same discovery. She found many traces of fighting. After the two of them communicated with each other, they vaguely analyzed some clues. From the traces of fighting left in the cave, the fight wasn't fierce. It was very short and ended very quickly. This means that the murderer's strength is far beyond the true energy realm, and there is more than one of them. That's why they were able to capture all 10 odd job disciples so quickly. From the traces of fighting in the cave and the remaining aura of true energy, the murderer should be at the mystic comprehending realm. At this point, Ji Tianqing already had a plan in his mind. He vaguely guessed that this incident was most likely done by the Tianjian sect. However, after a moment of silence, Yun Yao suddenly said another discovery. "Junior brother Tianqing, I just detected the aura of the demon clan in this cave. The experts of the demon clan have been here before." "What? The aura of the demon clan?" Ji Tianqing was stunned. He furrowed his brows and his eyes were filled with doubt. Previously, he had assisted Yun Yao in carrying out a mission and had joined hands to break into the demon cave. He knew that Yun Yao had the bloodline of the heavenly spirit sacred body, so she was very sensitive to the aura of various races. Since Yun Yao had detected the aura of the demon clan in the cave and confirmed that the experts of the demon clan had been here before, of course, he believed her without a doubt. He just felt puzzled. He felt that things were getting more and more complicated, and the truth was getting more and more confusing. Isn't it the Tianjian sect who did this? Why would the demon clan come here? They shouldn't be targeting Dragon Mountain. Then what do they want to do? Yun Yao also furrowed her brows and looked puzzled. The two of them pondered for a moment, but they couldn't figure out any useful clues. Therefore, Yun Yao suggested, judging from the traces left here, the 10 odd job disciples didn't die here. They should have been taken away by the murderer. Let's continue to explore the cave and see if we can find more clues. Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement and followed her out of the cave. They continued to walk downwards along a tunnel on the cave wall. This tunnel was even darker and a little narrow. Ji Tianqing looked at the map of the tunnel and confirmed that this tunnel was newly excavated by the Tianjian sect less than 2 years ago. The two of them walked along the tunnel for a while. Yun Yao detected the aura of the demon clan again, and he also found some subtle traces. It seems that this matter is very likely related to the demon clan. The 10 odd job disciples who were captured should have been taken from here. Let's continue to go deeper. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao continued to move deeper into the cave along the tunnel. Along the way, the two of them kept finding traces and clues related to the demon clan and the odd job disciples. After about an hour, the two of them had gone several thousand meters underground. This newly excavated tunnel also came to an end. They were blocked by a pitch-black cliff in front of them. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao stood at the edge of the cliff, looking around with sharp eyes. Behind the two of them was a spacious cave, which was also the end of the tunnel and the site where the ores were collected. In front of them was the cliff, which was about 100 meters wide. The bottom of the cliff was pitch black and bottomless. Seeing this, the two of them showed puzzled expressions and whispered to each other. How can this be? There's actually a cliff deep underground. The newly excavated tunnel of the Tianjian sect was blocked by the cliff here. If we hadn't come to investigate, I'm afraid no one would have come here. Junior brother Tianqing, there's still the aura of the demon clan here. It doesn't seem to be remnants. The aura is a little heavy. I suspect that the demon clan is hiding here. We have to be careful. Just as Yun Yao reminded Ji Tianqing to be careful, several black shadows suddenly rushed out of the spacious cave behind the two of them. A total of 5 black shadows rushed out of the darkness and silently rushed toward the two of them. Their bodies were bursting with dense blood-red light and killing intent. At that moment, Yun Yao was instantly alert. A cold light flashed in her palm, and a treasured sword appeared. Junior brother Tianqing, be careful. She suddenly turned around and looked at the black shadows. She waved her hand and slashed out 5 dazzling sword rays. Chapter 208. Swish. 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 5 dazzling sword gleams shot towards the 5 figures in the darkness. The leader of the 5 black figures was a woman with a voluptuous figure. She was familiar to Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing. She instantly activated her demonic technique and turned her palms into a pair of giant bloody hands. She slapped at the 5 sword gleams. Only a series of muffled bangs could be heard as the 5 sword beams were all smashed into pieces, as if they had collapsed. Seeing this familiar scene, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's expressions changed slightly. A glint of killing intent flashed across their eyes. Demonis! It's you again! Yun Yao shouted angrily with a frosty face. She swung her sword at the leading demonis. Ji Tianqing also took out his black dragon sword and pounced at the 4 black figures behind the demonis with a murderous look. The 4 figures were abnormally tall and powerful. Their eyes were dark red and they were surrounded by black fog and demonic aura. They were obviously demon guards. Ji Tianqing had fought with these demon guards in the demon cave. He knew that they were all at the mystic enlightening realm. Swish. 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 He swung his black dragon sword with all his might and slashed out 4 dazzling sword gleams towards the 4 demon guards. The 4 demon guards quickly counterattacked and blocked the 4 sword gleams. Their target was very clear. They ignored Yun Yao and charged at Ji Tianqing with their swords and sabers. In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianqing was surrounded and attacked by the 4 demon guards. On the other side, Yun Yao was also fighting with Blood Moon Infanta. Their fight was so intense that it caused a gale to blow in the cave. Both of them were Origin Core realm experts. Every move they made had the power to shatter mountains and crack rocks. After exchanging a dozen moves, they moved to a corner of the cave, far away from Ji Tianqing and the 4 demon guards. The shockwaves from the battle between the two of them formed a violent gust of wind, blowing the sand and rocks in the cave into the air and splashing out countless broken stones. Bang bang! The Blood Moon Infanta swung her bloody hands towards Yun Yao, but Yun Yao dodged it. Her bloody hands slammed into the hard rock wall, leaving 2 washbowl-sized handprints on the rock wall. Dense cracks appeared all around the giant handprint, and countless pieces of gravel splashed out. Shwa! Yunyao took the opportunity to counterattack. She swept her sword toward Blood Moon Commandery Princess, but Blood Moon Commandery Princess dodged it. The 2-meter-long blazing white sword light slashed the rock wall, creating a huge gully and sending countless rocks flying. The two of them fought back and forth, and it was difficult to determine the victor in a short time. On the other side, Ji Tianqing was besieged by 4 demon guards. His situation was very dangerous. Even though he was at LV1 of the Tongxian realm and wielded the Black Dragon sword, he was still unable to fend off the attacks of the demon clan guards. After all, the demon clan guards were all at LV4 of the Tongxian realm, and they had also cultivated the saber technique that allowed them to attack together. The 4 of them advanced and retreated in an orderly manner. All kinds of violent attacks emerged one after another. They were like stormy waves that could drown him at any time. This battle was even more dangerous and difficult than when he had fought Hang Chen. He had no choice but to put away the Black Dragon sword and use the Flying Star sword technique. Thousand Feather Blade! Ji Tianqing shouted angrily. He activated the power of the sword embryo and released 9 golden sword lights towards the 4 demon clan guards. Swish swish swish! The 9 sword lights stabbed at an extremely fast speed. They stabbed 200 times in a breath, and a dazzling golden light burst out. With him as the center, a radius of 10 meters was enveloped by the golden sword lights. Everyone's figures were also drowned by the golden light. This move was indeed effective. The 4 demon clan guards could no longer attack. They could only desperately defend against the sword lights. The sword lights collided with the long saber and the heavy sword constantly, producing crisp, ding-ding-dang-dang, sounds that reverberated violently in the cave. Ji Tianqing finally felt less pressure. He took the opportunity to escape from the area enveloped by the golden light and distanced himself from the 4 demon clan guards. In a short span of 5 breaths, the 9 sword lights had stabbed more than 1,000 times. The power was extremely violent. The 4 demon clan guards were lucky not to die, but they were severely injured. It was a tragic sight. The armors worn by the 4 of them were all twisted and deformed by the sword rays, and a few cracks appeared on them. The areas that were not protected by the armor were pierced by the sword lights. There were many bloody wounds, and dark purple blood flowed out. In the blink of an eye, the 4 demon clan guards were covered in purple blood. Their hair was disheveled, and they looked extremely miserable. Fortunately, they protected their heads, chests, and other vital parts so that they would not die on the spot. Otherwise, they would have become corpses. Damn bastard! Kill him! Chop him into minced meat! The 4 demon clan guards roared furiously. They did not care about their injuries at all. Holding on to their long sabers and heavy swords, they pounced on Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was standing more than 10 meters away. He activated the power of the sword embryo and released the second move of the Flying Star sword technique. Wind Thunder Strike. 2 golden sword lights slashed out crazily, killing 2 of the demon clan guards. The golden light mixed with the violent hurricane. It was like a bolt of golden lightning that struck the 2 demon clan guards in an instant. Kaboom! In the deafening loud sound, the 2 demon clan guards were sent flying. Blood splattered all over their bodies, as though there was a rain of blood. A deep pit the size of a water tank was formed on the rocky ground. Countless pieces of gravel burst out. Ji Tianqing took care of the 2 demon clan guards in one move. They were severely injured and vomited blood. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. However, there were still 2 demon clan guards. They exploded with blood-red murderous aura and charged at him recklessly to avenge their companions. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing frowned. He had no choice but to use the third move of the Flying Star Sword technique. After I mastered the Crimson Dragon Flash, I haven't really used it in a fight. You guys are just right for me to practice. This thought flashed through his mind. He immediately made a special gesture with his hands, drawing out a mysterious trajectory. He activated the true core power in his body. In the next moment, he suddenly put his palms together and pushed forward. A 2-meter-long golden sword burst out from his palm. It carried a dazzling golden flame. Like the shadow of a dragon, it attacked the 2 demon clan guards. This Crimson Dragon Flash was not only powerful, but also focused on speed. When the Crimson Dragon Flash was practiced to a high level, it would flash past like an aurora, leaving the enemy no time to react or dodge. Bang! In the muffled sound, the Crimson Dragon Flash fiercely hit the 2 demon clan guards. The tall and sturdy bodies of the 2 demon clan guards seemed especially small and weak under the golden flame of the Crimson Dragon Flash. Without a doubt, the 2 demon clan guards were also sent flying. A rain of blood sprayed from their bodies. They fell on the ground 10 meters away. Ji Tianqing used 3 moves of the ultimate sword technique in a row and finally defeated the 4 demon clan guards. He was about to chase after them and kill the 4 demon clan guards. He wanted to eliminate them completely. However, at this moment, the Blood Moon Infanta rushed over. Swoosh! She turned into a black fog of demonic energy and swept away the 4 blood-stained and heavily injured demon clan guards in an instant. In the blink of an eye, she turned around and fled with the 4 demon clan guards. What surprised Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao was that she actually jumped off the cliff as fast as lightning. Chapter 209. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were startled when they saw Blood Moon Commandery Princess jump off the cliff. Both of them were puzzled. Why did Blood Moon Commandery Princess jump off the cliff to escape? The bottom of the cliff was pitch black and bottomless, and they didn't know what kind of dangers were hidden there. Since Blood Moon Commandery Princess jumped off the cliff to escape so decisively, could it be that she knew the situation under the cliff very well? Or was it that she was forced to retreat again and again by Yun Yao, so she panicked and didn't know where to go? Ji Tianqing frowned and was considering whether he should chase after the demoness or not. Yun Yao reached out to grab his wrist and jumped off the cliff. Although his wrist was grabbed by Yun Yao's slender hand, he couldn't help but feel a strange feeling and ripple in his heart. But he was pulled by Yun Yao to jump off the cliff. At this critical moment, he didn't have time to think about random things. His mind was filled with surprise and worry. Oh my God! Eldest senior sister is pulling me to jump off the cliff. Both of us can't fly. If we chase after the demoness with all our might, won't we lose our lives? At the same time that these thoughts appeared in his mind, he and Yun Yao were continuously descending in the darkness, falling down the cliff at an extremely fast speed. Yun Yao seemed to have sensed his thoughts and used a secret sound transmission technique to say to him, "Junior brother Tianqing, don't panic. I have the fiery wind wings, so we'll be fine." As her voice fell, she reached out to pull out a white jade hairpin from her hair bun. Since the first time Ji Tianqing met Yun Yao, she had been wearing it. The hairpin was very exquisite and beautiful, with a lifelike flying bird carved on the end. In the past, Ji Tianqing only thought that this hairpin was very beautiful and matched Yun Yao's temperament very well. It made her look extremely beautiful and otherworldly like a fairy. But he didn't expect that this hairpin was actually a magic tool. When Yun Yao poured her boundless true core energy into the hairpin, it immediately lit up with a dazzling brilliance. Whoosh! The bird engraved on the hairpin seemed to come alive and instantly possessed Yun Yao's body. A ball of white light enveloped her body, and a pair of wings appeared on her back. This pair of wings was like the wings of a divine bird. The left wing was as red as fire, while the right wing was as white as snow. It was extremely gorgeous and dazzling. Yun Yao gently flapped her fiery wind wings and stopped falling, slowing down the speed of their fall. Only then did Ji Tianqing calm down. He stared at her wind and fire wings and couldn't help but reveal a look of envy. Yun Yao was looking around for traces of the blood moon infanta with her sharp eyes, so she didn't notice his gaze. The bottom of the cliff was as dark as ink, without the slightest bit of light. The cliffs were also very steep, almost perfectly straight. Yun Yao flapped her fiery wind wings and circled in the air for a while, but she still didn't see the blood moon infanta. Did she fall to the bottom of the cliff? Wouldn't he fall to his death? Impossible. She is the infanta of the demon clan and has many treasures. Yun Yao analyzed silently. Then she continued to fall with Ji Tianqing and flew toward the bottom of the cliff. Ji Tianqing's left wrist was grabbed by her. His body was unbalanced, so he subconsciously stretched out his right hand and hugged her arm with both of his hands. This posture was a little intimate, which inevitably made people's imaginations run wild. But at this moment, the two of them were at the bottom of the cliff, floating in the dark air. Neither of them noticed this. Or perhaps, the two of them noticed it, but they tacitly pretended to be calm and pretended that nothing had happened. After a while, Yun Yao and Ji Tianqing fell for nearly 1,000 meters and finally landed at the bottom of the cliff. Their feet stepped on the rocky ground. The surroundings were as dark as ink. It was dead silent, and the air was a little gloomy and cold. After landing, Ji Tianqing let go of Yun Yao's arm and looked around to observe. With his current strength, even in this dark environment, he could see clearly within 20 meters of him. In addition to his eyes, he could also use his soul sense to sense and explore the surroundings. His soul sense had just been born, so it was still very weak. He could only sense within a radius of 10 meters. Yun Yao's strength was stronger, and her soul sense was also more powerful. She could explore within a radius of 100 meters. The two of them silently explored the surroundings. Neither of them spoke, and the surroundings were extremely quiet. In this dark and unfamiliar area, the two of them didn't move separately in order to avoid unpredictable dangers. Soon, 15 minutes had passed, and the two of them had explored the bottom of the cliff clearly. This was an open space with a radius of nearly 1,000 meters. The ground was made of hard rock, and there were many broken stones scattered around. Apart from the two of them, there was nothing else in the open space. There was also no trace of the infanta of the blood moon. Yun Yao could clearly sense that there was no aura of the infanta of the blood moon here. She frowned and thought for a while. Then she guessed the result. Junior brother Tianqing, there is no aura of the infanta of the blood moon here. She has never been here. Ji Tianqing was startled. He asked in disbelief, so, she has already escaped. But we saw her jump off the cliff with our own eyes. Could it be that she jumped into the air and left this place? How is that possible? You are right. Yun Yao nodded and explained, she really escaped in the air. Although this is inconceivable, she was able to do it. She must have used the smoke net umbrella. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked in confusion, smoke net umbrella? Yes, it is a heavenly origin grade magic weapon. Yun Yao nodded slightly and explained in a calm tone, it is a sacred object of the demon tribe. It has an unimaginably powerful effect. In the past 100 years, the demon tribe's high priest has snuck into our sect several times. After being discovered by our sect's elders, he was able to escape safely. It was because of this treasure, the smoke net umbrella. After pausing for a while, she continued, if my guess is correct, the infanta of the blood moon has already escaped from Dragon Mountain and is far away from this place. Sigh, what a pity. She escaped again. Ji Tianqing sighed with a face full of regret. Yun Yao said with a calm face, it's okay. We will have another chance in the future. Ji Tianqing nodded and asked, Senior sister, the trail ends at the edge of the cliff. The residual demon tribe's aura in the mine should have been deliberately left by the infanta of the blood moon. She must have deliberately lured us to the edge of the cliff and ambushed us there. What should we do now? Should we go back the way we came and meet Elder Chu? Yunyao shook her head slightly and looked at the dark area in front of them. She said in a calm tone, "This place is strange. Follow me." Ji Tianqing didn't know the reason, so he quickly followed her. After walking for about 100 meters, they arrived in front of a rock wall. When they got closer, Ji Tianqing discovered that there was a pitch-black cave on the rock wall. The entrance of the cave was like a big door. Inside the cave was a pitch-black passage that led to an unknown place. This passage was obviously man-made. Moreover, the traces of it were very old. It was at least several hundred years old. Ji Tianqing immediately understood what Yunyao meant. He couldn't help but reveal a faint smile. It seems that there are some secrets hidden in the depths of this Dragon Mountain. Chapter 210. In the evening, the sun was about to set, and the forest was dimly lit. In a mountain range 200 miles away from Dragon Mountain, a black fog was galloping in the forest. It was rushing back to the demon cave at an extremely fast speed. The black fog was like a disk or the surface of an umbrella. It was spinning in the air at an extremely fast speed. Every time it flickered, it would fly several hundred meters away. After about 2 hours, the black fog crossed several hundred miles of mountain range and finally stopped in a forest at the foot of a mountain. Swish! The black fog suddenly disappeared and turned into a black paper umbrella. Blood Moon Commandery Princess and 4 demon guards appeared in the forest out of thin air. The 4 demon guards were covered in blood and were in an extremely sorry state. Blood Moon Commandery Princess was unharmed. She stretched out her hand to hold the black paper umbrella and put it away. The black paper umbrella immediately shrunk to the size of an embroidery needle and disappeared into her palm. She stepped into a thicket of thorns and waved her hand to release several black fog to break a formation. Immediately, a gloomy cave appeared in the thicket of thorns. Blood Moon Commandery Princess was the first to enter the cave. She rushed into the cave as fast as the wind and the 4 demon guards followed closely behind her. After a short while, they returned to the gloomy and bloody demon cave. Blood Moon Commandery Princess passed through the spacious and gloomy cave and opened a stone door to enter a gloomy secret chamber. There was a dark red blood pool in the secret chamber. The statue of the demon emperor stood in the middle of the blood pool. The high priest was standing beside the blood pool. When he saw Blood Moon Commandery Princess return, he hurried to greet her and asked with concern, "Commandery Princess, how are you? Are you hurt?" Blood Moon Commandery Princess walked to the front of the high priest. A small black needle flew out of her right hand's fingertip. It was the smoky umbrella. She returned the smoky umbrella to the high priest and said with a smile, "This operation went smoothly. With the smoky umbrella in my hand, how could Yunyao hurt me?" The high priest put away the smoky umbrella and revealed a gratified smile on his face. "You deliberately left clues in the mine tunnel of Dragon Mountain and lured Yunyao to the cliff. Since the operation went smoothly, they should have found that tunnel and the ancient tomb by now, right? Hehe, they will definitely report to the Sky Pillar sect as soon as they discover the ancient tomb. At that time, the Sky Pillar sect will understand why the Tianjin sect is unwilling to give up Dragon Mountain. They will certainly send a large number of experts to explore the ancient tomb and find a way to crack the ancient tomb's protective array." The Blood Moon Infanta also sneered complacently and praised sincerely, "The high priest is brilliant enough to design such a perfect plan. The ancient tomb's protective array is a heavenly origin grade array. Neither the Tianjin sect nor us can break the array. Only the Sky Pillar sect has the strength to do so. When the time comes, the experts of the Sky Pillar sect will have gone to break the ancient tomb's formation. The Sky Pillar sect will definitely be empty of power and weak in defense. We can take the opportunity to sneak into the Sky Bearing sect and rescue His Majesty the Demon Emperor. Moreover, after the people from the Sky Pillar sect break the ancient tomb's formation, we'll catch them off guard and take away the treasures in the ancient tomb. He 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 he. This is really a brilliant plan to kill two birds with one stone. Next, we can just sit back and reap the benefits. The high priest smiled reservedly and said modestly, although my plan is brilliant, it is also due to the Infanta's contribution. If the Infanta didn't go to the Tianjian sect personally and capture Ran Donglai, how could I find out the secret of Dragon Mountain and know about the 1,000-year-old ancient tomb? The Blood Moon Infanta nodded with a smile and said, since that's the case, after our plan succeeds and we rescue His Majesty the Demon Emperor, we will be the greatest contributors. Ha ha ha. The High Priest and the Infanta looked at each other and revealed an expectant smile. Dragon Mountain, deep underground. Ji Tianqing Yunyao passed through the dark and ancient passage and stood on a square paved with black stone slabs. This square, which had a radius of 100 meters, was ancient and decayed. The ground was filled with gullies and cracks. However, the two of them didn't care. Their eyes were fixed on the scene in front of them, and their faces were full of surprise. Behind the square, there was a colorful light shield that had a radius of 1,000 meters. The light shield was like a giant bowl that was upside down on the ground. It shone with a dazzling five-colored brilliance and emitted a majestic aura of true core strength. The five-colored brilliance represented the true core strength of the five elements. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but exclaim, "This is a grand array, a divine array." Yun Yao was also surprised. She nodded and said, "It's really incredible. Our sect has controlled Dragon Mountain for so many years, but we didn't realize that there was a divine array deep underground. Eldest senior sister, the divine array wouldn't appear here for no reason. Let's go and take a look." After saying that, Ji Tianqing pulled Yun Yao and walked toward the grand array. The two of them walked across the dilapidated square and stopped in front of the divine array. Previously, the two of them were too far away to see what was inside the five-colored light shield. At this moment, the two of them were observing from a close distance. Through the translucent divine array, they saw an ancient building in the middle of the grand array. Black boulders that were 5 meters long and weighed tens of thousands of kilograms paved a solemn path. At the end of the path, there were steps made of the same black rocks. After 18 steps, there was a high platform that was almost 100 meters wide. On top of the platform stood a gigantic stone tablet that was 1,000 meters tall, towering between heaven and earth. Even though they were hundreds of meters away and separated by a layer of the divine array, the two of them could still feel the desolate and solemn aura that the giant stone tablet was emitting. There were a few large words carved on the black stone tablet. The words were ancient, and the strokes were vigorous and powerful. They revealed a sharp sword intent that soared into the sky. Ji Tianqing stared at the giant black stone tablet. A hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. He did not know why, but when he saw the giant stone tablet, he could not help but think of the sword tablet in Kenshin's tomb. The ancient words on the stone tablet emitted a soaring sword intent that gave him an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Ji Tianqing's heart skipped a beat. A thought flashed across his mind. Could this stone tablet be related to Kenshin's tomb in some way? Although he felt that this idea was a little absurd, it was almost impossible to link Kenshin's tomb and the stone tablet that appeared under Dragon Mountain. But for some reason, after this idea appeared, it lingered in his mind, and he could not get rid of it. At this moment, Yun Yao, who was next to him, whispered, "Junior brother Tianqing, this building in the divine array is an ancient tomb." Ji Tianqing looked over and saw that behind the 1,000-meter tall stone tablet, there was indeed a tomb that was as large as a palace. The tomb was in the shape of a semicircle. It was made of huge black rocks that weighed thousands of kilograms. The surface of the huge rocks was mottled and filled with marks that were etched by time. He could vaguely estimate that this solemn and dignified ancient tomb had existed for at least 1,000 years. Without a doubt, this was a 1,000-year-old ancient tomb that was protected by the divine array. The person buried in the ancient tomb was definitely not a nobody. Chapter 211. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were both amazed as they looked at the 1,000-year-old tomb in the Tianyuan formation. After a long time, the two of them saw the layout of the tomb clearly and began to discuss in a low voice. Ji Tianqing sneered and said, "No wonder the Tianjian sect was so determined to get Dragon Mountain. In order to win the competition, they didn't hesitate to cheat. At first, I was wondering why the Tianjian sect was still unwilling to give up Dragon Mountain when it had been destroyed to this extent. Now it seems that they had discovered the tomb hidden underground long ago. That's why they wanted to continue to occupy Dragon Mountain." Yun Yao nodded in agreement and said in a cold voice, "Our sect controlled Dragon Mountain for decades. We took care of Dragon Mountain like a paradise. We didn't excavate the underground mineral veins. That's why we didn't discover this underground tomb. However, after the Tianjian sect occupied Dragon Mountain, they excavated the mineral veins crazily. That's how they discovered this tomb by accident. Fortunately, this tomb is protected by the Tianyuan formation. The Tianjian sect shouldn't have the ability to break the formation. Otherwise, they would have broken into the tomb long ago." Ji Tianqing said with a serious face, "Senior sister, the layout of this tomb is huge and magnificent. It has been protected by the Tianyuan formation for thousands of years. The person buried in the tomb must be a martial arts expert. Even the Tianjian sect couldn't break the Tianyuan formation. You and I have no chance of breaking the formation. In that case, we'd better leave here as soon as possible and return to report to the sect leader." Yun Yao nodded slightly and said, "I have the same idea. Only a Tianyuan expert can break this kind of Tianyuan formation. Let's return to the sect immediately. As for how to deal with this tomb, the sect leader will decide." After the two of them made up their minds, they turned and left the tomb. They crossed the broken square and entered the ancient passage. After passing through the long and dark passage, the two of them returned to the open space below the cliff. Yun Yao took out the hairpin from her hair bun again and poured her true essence into it, turning the hairpin into a pair of wind and fire wings. There was no need for her to reach out to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing had already consciously hugged her arm, waiting for her to take off. Yun Yao's expression didn't change. She didn't seem to have any thoughts about it. However, when Ji Tianqing stole a few glances at her, he discovered that her crystal-clear, jade-like earlobes were actually dyed with a layer of red. Yun Yao, such an otherworldly fairy, actually knows how to be shy. A strange feeling welled up in Ji Tianqing's heart. He was inexplicably happy. However, when normal girls are shy, their cheeks will turn red. Her face is normal, but her earlobes will turn red. Interesting. Just as he was secretly muttering in his heart, Yun Yao had already flapped her wind and fire wings, flying him up the cliff. After a few short breaths, the two of them flew to the top of the cliff and landed on the open space. Ji Tianqing hadn't carefully experienced the softness of Yun Yao's body yet. He could only silently let go of her arm and reluctantly withdraw his hands. "Let's go," Yun Yao said with a calm expression. Ji Tianqing nodded and hurriedly followed her footsteps. They walked side by side into the dark mine tunnel. An hour later, the two of them walked out of the complex and winding mine tunnel and returned to the mountainside. Chu Huaishan had already investigated several mining sites and was waiting for them at the entrance of the cave. After the three of them met, Chu Huaishan asked, "Yun Yao, Tianqing, did you find anything?" Yun Yao nodded and said in a low voice, "Elder Chu, we found a secret deep underground. However, this matter shouldn't be publicized for the time being. Let's return to the sect first." Chu Huaishan saw her serious expression and understood that this secret was extremely important. He was also shaken and hurriedly nodded, "All right, let's not delay. Let's return to the sect immediately." Then, the three of them returned to the dragon-gazing platform at the top of the mountain. Riding the spirit birds and red-crowned cranes, they rushed back to the Sky Pillar sect as fast as lightning. When the three of them rushed back to the Sky Pillar sect, it was already time to light the lanterns. Several of the mountain peaks in the sect were lit with lanterns. Chu Huaishan and Yunyao went to the Sky Pillar Hall to report the news to Sect Master Chu Tianqing. Ji Tianqing returned to the storm courtyard. Ever since he saw the ancient tomb under the Dragon Mountain with his own eyes, he had been puzzled. He frowned and pondered for a while. He couldn't help but want to enter the Kenshin tomb and ask the sword soul of the burial of heaven about this matter. Whoosh! When his consciousness focused on the black hole in his dantian, it passed through the black hole and entered the Kenshin tomb. It was still the same dark and cold space. His consciousness condensed into a translucent human figure and flew over the wasteland. A moment later, he flew to the indomitable sword steel and stopped. He looked up at the four big words on the sword steel and found that the strokes, momentum, and sharp sword intent of these words were very similar to the words on the stone steel in the ancient tomb. This also confirmed his conjecture that the 1,000-year-old ancient tomb was related to the Kenshin tomb. Senior Burial of Heaven, sorry to disturb you. I have something to ask you. Ji Tianqing cupped his hands toward the huge sword steel and called out loudly. A moment later, the voice of the sword soul of the burial of heaven came from the black sword steel. Kid, did you encounter a problem in your cultivation? The voice of the burial of heaven was as ancient and desolate as ever. Ji Tianqing quickly shook his head and explained, Senior Burial of Heaven, I don't want to ask you about a cultivation problem. Today, I found a 1,000-year-old ancient tomb at the bottom of Dragon Mountain, 300 miles away from the Sky Pillar sect. He explained the matter in a simple and clear manner, including the layout of the 1,000-year-old ancient tomb and the appearance of the huge stone steel. I saw that the words, strokes, and momentum of the sword intent on the stone steel are very similar to the words on this sword steel. Senior Burial of Heaven, is there any connection between that 1,000-year-old ancient tomb and the Kenshin tomb? After listening to his story, the sword soul of the burial of heaven pondered for a moment before answering, perhaps there is some connection, but this is a small matter from 1,000 years ago. I can't remember it clearly. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and continued to ask, Senior Burial of Heaven, that 1,000-year-old ancient tomb is protected by the Heaven Origin Formation. From the layout and momentum of the ancient tomb, the person buried in it must have an extraordinary identity. It is very likely that he was a Heaven Origin expert. Don't tell me you can't remember anything at all. The sword soul of the burial of heaven chuckled and said in a low voice, Kid, there seem to be several Heaven Origin experts in the star ancient realm 1,000 years ago. How do I know who is in that ancient tomb? Moreover, a Heaven Origin expert may be an unattainable expert to you, but to me in Kenshin, he is just a weak ant. After a pause, he continued, however, the Heaven Origin Formation you mentioned is a little familiar, like déjà vu. Tell me more about the Tianyuan Grand Formation in detail. What is it like? 6th update, please recommend tickets and tips. In addition, thanks to the 10,000 book coins from First Love Monster Axezy. I will add another chapter for this brother tomorrow. There will be a total of 7 chapters. Chapter 212. Ji Tianqing told the Sword Soul Burial of Heaven all the details of the Tianyuan Great Array. After the Sword Soul Burial of Heaven listened, it pondered for a moment, then said in a low voice, Boy, I still have to think about this Great Array. After that, it didn't make a sound. Ji Tianqing didn't know if it was asleep or lost in thought. He waited for a quarter of an hour, but the Sword Soul Burial of Heaven didn't say anything, so he had to leave the Kenshin tomb for the time being. After his consciousness returned to his body, he entered the secret room and began to cultivate. Before, he had obtained a large number of elixirs, spirit fruits, and other resources, which could help him quickly refine his acupoints. The night passed quickly. Early the next morning, Ji Tianqing left the Wind Cloud courtyard and rushed to the White Cloud Hall to find Yunyao. When he saw Yunyao, Yun Yao was sitting cross-legged on the highest stone platform on the roof of the White Cloud Hall. The stone platform was a piece of thousand-year-old jade, which could help warriors cultivate, gather the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, and make people's minds clear. It was a priceless treasure. Yun Yao, who was wearing a white dress, was sitting upright on the jade platform, meditating with her eyes closed. She was bathing in the early morning clouds on the mountain peak, facing the rising sun in the east, looking like a fairy who had descended from the ninth heaven. Ji Tianqing jumped from the corridor on the third floor of the palace to the roof and stood a few steps behind Yun Yao. Yun Yao didn't need to look back to know that he had come, so she stopped cultivating and asked with a calm expression, "Junior brother Tianqing, why did you come to find me?" Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Senior sister, sorry to disturb you. I came to find you because I want to ask you about that ancient tomb." Yun Yao was still sitting on the jade platform, with her back facing him, facing the sea of clouds and the rising sun in the east. She replied, "Last night I already reported the news to Zhang Menshizuan. Master sent 5 elders to Dragon Mountain overnight to investigate the Tianyuan array and the ancient tomb. The elders are stationed at Dragon Mountain, studying that great formation day and night. I believe that there will be a result soon. There is no need for us to worry about this matter." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "That's good." With several elders guarding Dragon Mountain, even if the Heavenly Sword sect has any schemes, it will be difficult for them to execute them. However, eldest senior sister, I thought about it for a long time last night, and I keep feeling that this matter is a little strange. I carefully recalled the process of us discovering the ancient tomb yesterday. I feel that the appearance of the demons is very strange. It seems that they deliberately led us to the edge of the cliff and led us to discover the ancient tomb. Yun Yao nodded slightly and agreed. "Yes, I've also thought about this problem. However, I didn't detect the aura left behind by the demons at the bottom of the cliff and near the ancient tomb. Therefore, the demons didn't go down to the bottom of the cliff, and they shouldn't have discovered the ancient tomb. As for why the demons kidnapped the odd job disciple and the 2 deacons, and why they ambushed us. Sect leader has sent people to investigate this matter thoroughly. Perhaps the truth will be revealed soon." After Ji Tianqing heard this, he smiled and nodded. "That's good. Then I won't disturb eldest senior sister's cultivation." After that, he cupped his hands to Yun Yao and was about to turn and leave. Before he left, he didn't forget to add, "Of course, if there is any news about the ancient tomb on Dragon Mountain, I hope that eldest senior sister can let me know." "Definitely." Yun Yao nodded and agreed. Ji Tianqing was relieved and left White Cloud Hall. In the Tianjian sect. The main peak of the sect was called the Divine Sword Peak. On the peak of the mountain, there was a magnificent palace called the Divine Sword Palace. This was the residence of the Tianjian sect leader, and it was also the place where the elders of the sect usually discussed matters. According to the rules of the Tianjian sect, on the 5th day of every month, the sect leader would gather all the elders to discuss matters in the Divine Sword Palace. Coincidentally, today was the day of the meeting. All the elders of the various halls had already entered the Divine Sword Palace and were waiting patiently. 9 elders in purple robes stood in 2 rows on both sides of the main hall. Everyone was whispering to each other, and their faces were dignified and indignant. Not long after, a middle-aged man in a blue robe, who was as thin as a bamboo pole and had a sharp aura, walked into the main hall. Although this person didn't look impressive, he had the aura of a Heaven Origin stage expert, and his whole body exuded a sharp and domineering aura. When the 9 elders saw this person, they immediately stopped talking and bowed. "Greetings, sect leader." There was no doubt that this person was the sect leader of the Tianjian sect, one of the top 3 experts in the ancient star realm. Behind the sect leader of the Tianjian sect was an old man in a yellow robe with white eyebrows and a goatee. Although this person had dark skin, a short stature, and a big belly, he pretended to have the demeanor of an immortal. The 9 elders had different opinions about this person, but on the surface, they didn't dare to show any disrespect. They all cupped their hands and bowed. Greetings, guest Huangfu. This person's surname was Huangfu, and his real name was unknown. He was temporarily the guest elder of the Tianjian sect. Although his position was the same as the 9 elders, he was deeply trusted and relied on by the Tianjian sect leader. His position in the Tianjian sect was extremely high, second only to the sect leader. The sect leader of the Tianjian sect walked to the main seat and sat down. Guest Huangfu stood beside him. Elders, in today's meeting, I would like to discuss an important matter with all of you. The sect leader of the Tianjian sect looked at everyone with a serious expression and said in a dignified and low voice, I believe everyone has already heard the news. Yesterday, people from the Sky Pillar sect discovered the ancient tomb under Dragon Mountain. Of course, this would happen sooner or later. From the day our sect lost the Dragon Mountain tournament and returned Dragon Mountain to the Sky Pillar sect, it was destined that the Sky Pillar sect would discover the ancient tomb. When the defeat of the Dragon Mountain tournament was mentioned, Elder Master Tang of the Outer sect revealed an ashamed and uneasy expression. Fortunately, the sect leader of the Tianjian sect didn't dwell on it. He continued, the Sky Pillar sect has occupied Dragon Mountain for so many years, but they still haven't discovered the ancient tomb deep underground. Our sect has occupied Dragon Mountain for only 3 years, but we found the ancient tomb underground. What does this mean? Our sect is destined to be a great sect protected by martial arts fate. That 1,000-year-old ancient tomb should belong to our sect. Hearing this, the elders all nodded in agreement. The sect leader of the Tianjian sect continued, the people from the Sky Pillar sect are already investigating the ancient tomb. Our sect can't start a war with them. Moreover, guest elder Huangfu and I have been working hard for several months, but we still haven't been able to crack the ancient tomb's formation. Perhaps only the people from the Sky Pillar sect can break that formation. Since that's the case, I'll send 3 elders to secretly keep an eye on the ancient tomb's movements. Once the Sky Pillar sect cracks the ancient tomb's formation, our sect will take the opportunity to take action and seize the ancient tomb. After saying this, the sect leader of the Tianjian sect named 3 elders and told them to go to Dragon Mountain after the meeting to secretly keep an eye on the ancient tomb. The Discipline Hall elder frowned and thought for a moment before asking, Sect leader, that ancient tomb is located deep under Dragon Mountain. It's very hidden. The Sky Pillar sect has only taken over Dragon Mountain for a few days. How could they have discovered the ancient tomb so quickly? Isn't there something fishy about this? The sect leader of the Tianjian sect nodded slightly and said with a grave expression, it's indeed fishy. I suspect that someone in our sect leaked the information about the ancient tomb. Hearing this, the elders' expressions changed and they began to discuss in low voices. Traitors were taboo in all the great sections. Once discovered, they were basically sentenced to death. Outer sect elder Master Tang hesitated for a moment before cupping his hands and reporting to sect leader, outer sect disciple Ran Donglai disappeared for no reason the day after the Dragon Mountain tournament ended. This person is one of the 3 disciples who participated in the Dragon Mountain tournament and knows the secret of Dragon Mountain. This subordinate suspects that this person may have leaked the information. Today's Chapter 7 update, please recommend me and give me tips. Thank you brothers for your support. Chapter 2:13. When the Tianjian sect master heard this, he immediately frowned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. This disciple was recruited from the Yong'an region. He has only been in the sect for 2 months and doesn't have much loyalty to the sect. How can we let him know the secret of Dragon Mountain? Elder Master Tang, Ran Donglai disappeared on the 2nd day of the large competition. Why did you only report this to me today? Elder Master Tang was enveloped by the Tianjian sect master's fierce aura. He immediately lowered his head in fear and quickly explained. Sect master, please calm down. It's not a big deal for a new outer sect disciple to go missing. Sect Master has been busy recently, so this subordinate didn't dare to disturb you. Ever since this subordinate learned that Ran Donglai went missing, I sent people to search and investigate everywhere. There hasn't been any news or results in the past few days. This subordinate can't explain it to you, Sect Master. The Tianjian Sect Master frowned and waved his hand impatiently. He shouted in a low voice, "Forget it. Since it has already happened, it's useless to talk about it. Elder Master Tang, I order you to personally lead people to investigate this matter. You must find Ran Donglai. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse." Elder Master Tang quickly bowed and cupped his fists. This subordinate obeys. The Tianjian Sect Master's anger subsided a little, and he looked at Guest Elder Huangfu next to him. "Guest Elder Huangfu, how is your deduction of the Sky Pillar Sect's 9-Dragon Spirit Vein diagram?" Guest Elder Huangfu nodded and calmly cupped his fists. "Reporting to Sect Master, I've already made some progress. However, when Deacon Qi investigated the sky-bearing sect for a few days, the spirit vein layout and terrain he found were somewhat superficial. It was only some superficial information. Based on the clues Deacon Qi found, this subordinate has preliminarily deduced the layout of the 9-Dragon Spirit Vein, but I'm still missing the most crucial details." At this point, he sighed with a face full of regret. Sigh. If there's a chance for this subordinate to enter the sky-bearing sect and personally observe the 9-Dragon Spirit Vein, this subordinate will definitely be able to present a detailed array diagram to the Sect Master. The Tianjian Sect Master narrowed his eyes. A cold glint flashed in his eyes as he said in a low voice, "The Sky Pillar Sect is on guard against our sect. I'm afraid it will be very difficult to realize your idea, Guest Elder Huangfu. However, destroying the Sky Pillar Sect's 9-Dragon Spirit Vein is a major matter. I'm not in a hurry. Honorable Guest Huangfu, you are a Grandmaster of Array Dao. I will have to trouble you with this matter. Please investigate more clues and do your best to complete the 9-Dragon Spirit Vein map. After I destroy the 9-Dragon Spirit Veins and destroy the Sky Pillar Sect's 1,000 years of foundation, my sect will be able to stabilize its position as the #1 sect and replace the Sky Pillar Sect in controlling the Heavenly Stellar region. At that time, I'll definitely give Guest Elder Huangfu the greatest credit." Guest Elder Huangfu smiled and hurriedly cupped his hands in salute. He flattered, it's this subordinate's honor to be able to contribute to the Sect Master's great ambition. The Sect Master is so farsighted and farsighted. It won't be long before you destroy the Sky Pillar Sect and unify the Heavenly Stellar region. Of course, everyone understood that Guest Elder Huangfu was flattering the Sect Master. However, his flattery hit the Tianjian Sect Master's heart. It made the Tianjian Sect Master happy and his anger dissipated. Next, the Tianjian Sect Master asked about some sect matters before announcing the end of the meeting and letting the elders carry out their orders. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 2 days, Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion in a secret room. After more than 40 hours of bitter cultivation, with the help of elixirs, he had successfully refined another aperture point. Although this result was not great and could not significantly increase his strength, it still made him feel gratified. In just a few days, I've successfully refined 2 apertures. This speed should be very fast. When I've refined all 8 apertures in the first meridian, I'll be able to advance to the second stage of the profound comprehension realm. After finishing his cultivation, Ji Tianqing walked out of the secret room. He left the room and prepared to make a trip to the Great Peace Palace. However, just as he walked into the courtyard, he ran into Deacon Du Wu. When Du Wu saw him, he seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly waved his hand. "Ji Tianqing. It's good that I ran into you. I have something to give you." A trace of doubt flashed in Ji Tianqing's eyes. He hurriedly walked in front of Du Wu, bowed, and asked, "Deacon Du, what is it?" Du Wu took out a letter from his spatial ring and handed it to him. He explained, "This is a letter sent to you by someone in a mundane kingdom. This letter was delivered to me yesterday. I knew that you were cultivating in seclusion, so I temporarily kept it for you. Ji Tianqing took the letter and thanked Du Wu before returning to his room. A letter from a mundane kingdom? It should be from father, right? He muttered in a low voice. With a trace of anticipation, he opened the sealed envelope. The handwriting on the letter was neat and tidy, with over 1,000 words. He recognized it at a glance. It was his father, Ji Changkong's handwriting. The letter said, "My son Tianqing, after you left, I missed you very much. I was also worried that you wouldn't be able to adapt to the Sky Pillar sect's rules. I know that you are meticulous and steady in your actions. However, the world of martial arts is complicated and people's hearts are unpredictable. You have to be more vigilant. Don't have the heart to harm others, but don't let your guard down. I've already recovered more than half of my injuries. I'm fine for the time being, so you don't have to worry. The Ji family's businesses are also gradually recovering and will be back to normal in half a year. Half a month ago, the Shadow Sword Hall's men caught the fugitive Ji Hao in the Hengchuan kingdom and have already brought him back to the Ji family. I didn't execute him because his father had already been beheaded and he was also a descendant of the Ji family. I imprisoned him in the dungeon for the rest of his life and made him face the wall to reflect on his mistakes." Ji Tianqing sat in front of his desk and carefully read the letter. Knowing that the Ji family's situation had stabilized and that his father's injuries were no longer a problem, he smiled. He continued reading and saw that the letter said, "Not long ago, the news of Ji Ling's death had already reached the imperial city of Azure Cloud. The imperial family and several great clans have already received the news, but the imperial family wasn't angry and didn't have any reaction. I've asked someone to secretly inquire. The emperor's meaning is that Ji Ling's death is an internal matter of the Sky Pillar sect and the imperial family can't interfere. Therefore, you don't have to worry about the imperial family's revenge. After Ji Ling's death, the Ling family lost their backer and has calmed down. They've restrained themselves and no longer attacked our Ji family. However, I can feel that the Ling family is only calm on the surface. I've already investigated and found that the Ling family's patriarch, Ling Sihai, left the imperial city half a month ago and his whereabouts are unknown. Tianqing, although you should be safe in the Sky Pillar sect, I still have to be careful. But as your father, I still hope that you will be more careful and not have any accidents." Chapter 214. The contents of the letter. He put the letter back into the envelope and solemnly kept it in his space ring. Fortunately, the royal family did not use Ji Ling's death to cause trouble for the Ji family. Otherwise, father would be in danger. When he killed Ji Ling, he was worried that the news would spread to the royal family. Would it infuriate the royal family and bring disaster to the Ji family? Now that he knew the royal family's attitude, he was finally relieved. The royal family did not pursue the matter of Ji Ling's death and did not make things difficult for the Ji family. I guess it has something to do with Cuckoo. That silly girl must have told the royal family the whole story and pleaded for mercy for me and the Ji family. Otherwise, the royal family would not forgive me and the Ji family even if they put up a front for the sake of their reputation. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a smile and whispered, although Cuckoo did not say anything and pretended that nothing happened, I still owe her a favor. He kept this matter in mind and decided to return Ji Ku's favor when he had the chance in the future. After a moment of contemplation, he walked out of the room and left the Tempest courtyard. He planned to make a trip to the Grand Peace Palace to help Xiang Wuji clean the courtyard and ask about the cultivation of the Crimson Dragon Flash. He had practiced it many times in the past few days and his understanding of the Crimson Dragon Flash had deepened. However, he had a doubt in his heart and could not figure it out even after thinking for a long time. He walked down the Atlas Peak along the forest path and hurried towards the Grand Peace Peak that was 10 miles away. However, when he passed by a pavilion at the foot of the mountain, he saw two figures in the pavilion. Two young girls in long dresses were standing in the pavilion and admiring the scenery behind the mountain. They were chatting softly with smiles on their faces. One of them was wearing a long green dress with neat bangs. It was Xian Xian. The other girl was wearing a long white dress. She was tall and beautiful, and her temperament was even more charming. When Ji Tianqing looked at the girl in the white dress, his heart skipped a beat and he could not help but frown. Although the girl in the white dress had a beautiful smile on her face and her white dress fluttered in the wind, it showed her graceful and alluring figure. However, Ji Tianqing always felt that she was a little strange, as if there was an invisible chill on her body. That kind of chill made people instinctively feel disgusted, but it could not be seen or touched, as if it was there or not. Ji Tianqing stopped and couldn't help but look at the girl in the white dress. At this moment, the girl in the white dress seemed to have sensed something and turned her head to look at him. When she saw his appearance clearly, an imperceptible cold light flashed through the girl's eyes. But in the blink of an eye, the girl's expression returned to normal. She turned her head and said something to Xian Xian, the smile on her face still bright and beautiful. Only then did Xian Xian see Ji Tianqing. She smiled and waved her hand, greeting him. "Tianqing, why are you here?" Ji Tianqing withdrew his gaze from the girl in the white dress and walked towards the pavilion with a smile. He entered the pavilion and stood in front of Xian Xian. He nodded with a smile and said, "Junior sister Xian Xian, I was preparing to go to Great Peace Palace. I didn't expect to meet you here." Finished speaking, he turned his head to look at the girl in the white dress. He looked at her closely and asked Xian Xian, "Junior sister Xian Xian, this is?" Xian Xian revealed a faint smile and pulled the girl in the white dress's hand. She introduced to him, "Tianqing, this is Shulan, my good sister. Shulan is an inner court disciple of the Heart Moon sect and also my aunt's eldest disciple." Previously, when Ji Tianqing was reading the history books, Xian Xian had told him about the 8 great sects in the Star Ancient Realm. Heart Moon sect was one of them. The Heart Moon sect was the most special sect among the 8 great sections. This sect only accepted female disciples. Even the guards and odd-job workers in the sect were all female. There was not a single male in the entire sect. The disciples of the Heart Moon sect mainly cultivated the Heart Moon mysterious technique and paid the most attention to cultivating one's character. They rarely participated in fighting and killing battles. Therefore, the female disciples of the Heart Moon sect were all beauties with dignified bearings and elegant temperaments. As for Xian Xian's aunt, Ji Tianqing had also heard her mentioned before. She was an elder of the Heart Moon sect and had an extraordinary status. Thinking up to here, Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and bowed to Shulan. He said with a slight smile, "I am Ji Tianqing. Greetings to Miss Shulan." At the same time as he bowed, he also stared at Shulan's eyes, wanting to see if there was any clue. But Shulan's expression was as calm as water. She revealed a gentle faint smile and said with a bow, "Shulan greets you." No matter if it was her gaze, actions, or tone, they were all very normal. There was not the slightest bit of abnormality. Ji Tianqing was secretly puzzled in his heart. His expression did not change as he asked Xian Xian, "Junior sister Xian Xian, there must be something important for Shulan to look for you, right? Did I take the liberty to disturb you too? It can't be considered a disturbance." Xian Xian lightly shook her head and explained, "My body has not been well since I was young. Aunt often asks Sister Shulan to come over and give me some precious medicinal ingredients. Today, Sister Shulan also gave me a golden leaf Ganoderma. I accompanied her to walk around the sect and see the scenery." "Oh, I see." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. "Coincidentally, I have been cultivating in seclusion for a long time and only came out today. Since I have nothing to do, I also want to walk around. If junior sister Xian Xian doesn't mind, I wonder if I can accompany you two to walk around." The reason why he made this request was not because he had any improper thoughts. He just wanted to observe Shulan a little more. Xian glanced at Shulan's expression. Seeing that she did not mind, she nodded in agreement. Thus, the three of them walked together. They strolled on the forest path and enjoyed the scenery. Xian and Shulan walked side by side in front, chatting as they walked. Both of them were in a good mood. Their faces were full of smiles. Ji Tianqing followed behind them. Occasionally, he would say a few words. Most of the time, he was silently observing Shulan. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. The three of them walked around the towering sky peak. It was already noon and the air was a little hot. Xian and Shulan wanted to go back to rest. Ji Tianqing could only wave goodbye to them. After the two of them left, Ji Tianqing hurried to the Great Palace. I observed Shulan for 2 hours and did not find any clues or abnormalities. Could it be that I was mistaken? He muttered in his heart. Then, he temporarily put this matter aside. After arriving at the Great Palace, he went straight to the third courtyard. Seeing that Xiang Wuji was refining pills in the pill room, he fetched a basin of water and found a rag to silently clean the room. The little ice fox and the little black dragon had been staying in the 100 treasures brocade pouch for a long time. They had already felt stifled. Ji Tianqing let them out and let them move around the Great Palace as they pleased. After all, they were already very familiar with this place. Unexpectedly, as soon as the little ice fox and the little black dragon left the 100 treasures brocade pouch, they impatiently flew toward the pill room. They wanted to find Xiang Wuji to ask for snacks. In the past few days that they had been with Ji Tianqing, they had not been able to eat spirit pills and spirit fruits. They had been drooling for a long time. Chapter 2:15. The fragrance of medicine permeated the pill room. The violet-robed Xiang Wuji stared at the bronze pill cauldron in front of him. He constantly sent out vast amounts of vital essence to adjust the true fire in the cauldron. After a while, he stopped, and a gratified smile appeared on his face. This cauldron of pills is about to be completed, he muttered to himself. He murmured to himself as he turned around and walked to the corner of the room, lying down comfortably on the rattan chair. Then, he took out an azure wine gourd from his space ring and raised his head to drink. At this time, he caught a glimpse of two small heads at the door from the corner of his eye. They were peeking into the pill room. Seeing this, Xiang Wuji immediately smiled and said exasperatedly, "You two little fellows, you're already here. What are you still hiding for?" Qian Yu and the little black dragon immediately revealed joyful smiles when they heard this. They hurriedly flew into the pill room and came to Xiang Wuji's side. "Senior, we've come to visit you," the little black dragon said seriously as he stared at Xiang Wuji. Qian Yu extended a front claw and bowed. He said with a smile, "Senior, we haven't seen you in so long. We've missed you to death." After saying that, it even squeezed the little black dragon beside it and gave it a look. The little black dragon paused for a moment before reacting. It hurriedly nodded in agreement and said seriously, "Yes, we've missed you to death." Xiang Wuji grinned and gave a teasing smile as he glanced at the two of them. "Huh, don't try this. Do you think this old man doesn't know what you're thinking? Do you miss me, or do you miss my spirit pills and spirit fruits?" The little black dragon said without hesitation, "Both." Qian Yu angrily glared at it and then hurriedly explained to Xiang Wuji with a smile, "Senior, of course we miss you. When we were in the Great Peace Palace, you took great care of us and gave us so many pills and fruits. We've always remembered this and are endlessly grateful to you." While it said this, its eyes had already drifted elsewhere. Seeing the bronze pill furnace in the pill room and smelling the pill fragrance coming from it, it couldn't help but swallow its saliva. Xiang Wuji took a sip of wine from his wine gourd and said slowly, "Since you're so grateful to this old man, why aren't you working for this old man? Little black dragon, go chop wood in the woodshed." You must fill the woodshed before nightfall. Little fox, go and fetch water for this old man. Today, you must fill all 36 vats with water. The little black dragon paused for a moment before turning to Qian Yu with a questioning look in its eyes. Qian Yu's eyes darted around before he quickly smiled and said, "Senior, you must be joking. A heaven origin stage cultivator like you is unfathomably powerful and resourceful. You can burn down mountains with a snap of your fingers and drown 7 armies with a wave of your hand. Why would you need us to carry water and chop firewood? Senior, I see that you're having a hard time refining pills. Why don't I massage your back?" Without waiting for Xiang Wuji to refuse, it waved its little claws and began to massage Xiang Wuji's back with all its strength. Seeing the little black dragon still in a daze in the air, it hurriedly gave the little black dragon a look, indicating for it to massage Xiang Wuji's legs. The little black dragon froze for a moment before reacting. It hurriedly extended a pair of claws that flashed with cold light and swatted at Xiang Wuji's legs. Xiang Wuji immediately frowned and cursed, "You 2 little bastards. Trying to curry favor for no reason, just what do you want?" The little black dragon hurriedly pulled back its claws in fright and looked dazedly at Xiang Wuji, not knowing what to say. Qian Yu continued to massage his back and said in a pitiful voice, "Senior, you don't know, but ever since we left the Great and Palace, we haven't been able to eat enough or wear warm clothes. It's that we haven't been able to eat enough or sleep well. Senior, we really miss you, we really miss our days in the Great and Palace." As it spoke, its big clear eyes were covered with a layer of mist. It looked like it was about to cry as it looked sincerely at Xiang Wuji. It looked especially pitiful and sad. Xiang Wuji couldn't help but roll his eyes. "So you're saying that Ji Tianqing, that brat, is abusing you?" Qian Yu hesitated and did not speak, but the little black dragon dazedly nodded. Xiang Wuji glared at the little black dragon and then knocked on Qian Yu's head. He cursed, "You 2 little bastards, don't play tricks with this old man. Forget it, this old man can't be bothered to argue with you. Look at your pitiful appearances." Before he could finish, Qian Yu's tears turned into laughter. It happily said, "Thank you, Senior. I knew that Senior was the best." At this time, the mist in its eyes had long disappeared. Where was the pitiful appearance? Xiang Wuji speechlessly shook his head. He took out 10 some spirit fruits and pills from his space ring and placed them on the table next to him. "All right, stop acting. Hurry and eat." The little black dragon and Qian Yu both let out joyful cries and hurriedly flew to the table to eat the spirit fruits and pills. Xiang Wuji couldn't help but smile at their joyful appearances. He picked up the azure calabash and continued to drink. In this period of time, Ji Tianqing didn't have many cultivation resources, so he naturally didn't have any extra spirit pills and spirit fruits for Qian Yu and the little black dragon. The 2 of them could only absorb the spiritual qi of the world and slowly recover their strength. They had been anxious for a long time. Now that they could eat their fill, these spirit pills and spirit fruits would be enough for them to refine for 10 days to half a month. In less than an hour, Qian Yu and the little black dragon had finished all the spirit pills and spirit fruits on the table. The 2 of them thanked Xiang Wuji before leaving the pill room in satisfaction. The 2 of them flew back to Ji Tianqing's side and burrowed into the 100 treasures brocade pouch to sleep, refining the energy of the spirit pills and spirit fruits. After Ji Tianqing finished cleaning the room, he went to the pill room to find Xiang Wuji and ask him about cultivation. With Xiang Wuji's guidance, he finally understood the crux of the problem. Unknowingly, an entire afternoon passed. Only when the sun set did Ji Tianqing leave the Great Palace and return to the storm courtyard. In a certain dazzling palace, in a quiet and secluded courtyard. Xian brought Shulan into the courtyard and smiled. "Shulan, you haven't come to see me in half a year. Since you're here, why don't you stay a few more days?" Shulan smiled and nodded. "Of course. Us two sisters can spend a few more days together. Xian pointed at the secluded courtyard and smiled. Shulan, you can stay in this courtyard for the next few days. This courtyard is used to entertain guests. Usually, no one lives here. If you stay here, no one will disturb you. Hearing this, Shulan immediately smiled and nodded. That's great. Little sister Xian is so considerate. Okay, then you should rest early. I'll come find you tomorrow. Xian waved her hand and left the courtyard. Shulan maintained her smile. Only after Xian left did her smile disappear and her expression darkened. Chapter 2:16. Night was about to fall. The small courtyard was dark and silent. Shulan walked into the room expressionlessly. She didn't light the lamp. After closing the door and windows, she lay down on the bed. She lay on the bed, motionless. Her eyes were tightly shut, and her entire body looked stiff, like a puppet. After a short while, dark red blood light gushed out of her body and emitted a faint smell of blood. Then, a ball of blood-red brilliance drilled out of her forehead. Her eyes were still closed, and her body was motionless as if she had fainted. However, the ball of dark red light circled twice in the air and turned into a light red figure with a swoosh. The figure was a woman with a height of nearly 2 meters. She looked exactly like the Blood Moon Infanta. She floated in front of the bed and looked at Shulan with a cold expression. Her eyes were full of disgust. Damn it! My primordial spirit stayed in her body for a whole day. I almost died from suffocation. As she spoke, she twisted her neck and limbs as if she was exercising her body. Humph! Despicable and lowly human. If it weren't for the plan, why would I stay in your body? The human race is so hypocritical and cunning. I had to pretend to be close to them when I was in your body. It really disgusts me. The Blood Moon Infanta's tone was cold. She stared at the unconscious Shulan with a face full of disdain and hatred. Apparently, she was very unwilling. After a while, the Blood Moon Infanta's primordial spirit stretched out and felt much more comfortable. Her resentment dissipated. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the window, muttering to herself in a low voice. The High Priest is so resourceful. He let me use a secret technique to possess a human body. In this way, I can easily enter the sky-bearing sect without arousing anyone's suspicion. My primordial spirit is in Shulan's body. Even if that bitch Yunyao comes, she can't detect my aura. Fortunately, Xian is innocent enough. She didn't see anything unusual and asked me to stay for a few more days. This is exactly what I want. In the next few days, I have to seize the opportunity to destroy the sealing array and prepare for the rescue of His Majesty. Speaking up to here, she recalled what happened during the day. She couldn't help but frown, her eyes revealing a cold murderous intent. Damn you, Ji Tianqing. That damned bastard seems to have sensed something. He's already suspicious of me and deliberately observed me for a long time. I have to stay away from him for the next few days. Even if my essence soul mystic technique is miraculous and almost impossible to be discovered, I still have to be careful. After all, I'm going to sneak into the Sky Pillar sect alone, so I have to make thorough preparations. When the time comes, I'll be able to work with the High Priest and break the seal in one fell swoop. After the Blood Moon Countess muttered to herself for a while, she made up her mind and confirmed her next plan. Then, she went into Shulan's forehead. 5 days passed quickly. During these 5 days, Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion in the secret chamber. After 5 days of arduous cultivation, he had finally refined his third aperture. His strength had increased a little, and he was not far from the second level of the mystic enlightening realm. During these few days, the Sky Pillar sect had been peaceful, and there was no news. After coming out of seclusion, Ji Tianqing went to the White Cloud Hall to ask Yun Yao about the news and progress of the Dragon Mountain ancient tomb. The Sky Pillar sect's elders had already gone to the Dragon Mountain to investigate for 7 or 8 days. He thought that there should be some progress in the matter. However, after asking Yun Yao, he learned that there was no progress in the Dragon Mountain ancient tomb. The Grand Heaven Essence formation guarding the ancient tomb was too profound and unfathomable. The Sky Pillar sect's elders had been studying it day and night for 7 or 8 days, but they still couldn't figure it out. They were still confused. The only thing they could be sure of was that the Grand Heaven Essence formation was ingenious and extraordinary. It had existed for thousands of years and was still intact. Ji Tianqing was a little surprised when he heard this, but he was more curious and puzzled. He was becoming more and more interested in the 1,000-year-old ancient tomb. He wanted to see what secrets were hidden in the ancient tomb after the Grand Heaven Essence formation was broken. Unfortunately, his strength was too low and he couldn't help at all. He could only wait patiently for news in the storm courtyard. Xian hadn't come to find him these few days. He guessed that Xian should be accompanying Shulan. When he thought of Shulan's figure and aura, he felt a little uneasy. However, he had never met Shulan before, so he couldn't conclude that there was something wrong with her based on his intuition. After all, Shulan was Xuanxuan's good sister. If he continued to pester and observe her, it would inevitably arouse Xian and Shulan's disgust. As a result, he could only turn a blind eye to this matter and not think too much about it. Late at night, he was cultivating in the secret room. Suddenly, the voice of the Sword Soul Burial of Heaven sounded in his mind. "Boy, I have something to say to you." Hearing the voice of the Burial of Heaven, Ji Tianqing was delighted and quickly ended his cultivation. His consciousness entered Kenshin's tomb and condensed into a translucent human figure. He quickly flew across the wasteland and arrived at the sword stele. He looked up at the towering sword stele and asked loudly, "Burial of Heaven, you finally remember?" The voice of the Sword Soul Burial of Heaven came out from the huge, pitch-black sword stele. "Yes, the ancient tomb and the Heaven Origin Grand Array you mentioned before reminded me of a past event from 1,000 years ago. Back then, Kenshin passed by the ancient star realm and stayed here for a period of time. By chance, he took in a boy with a bad fate. That boy and Kenshin were fated, so Kenshin kept him by his side and gave him pointers for a few days. He also gave him a secret array Dao book. More than 10 years after Kenshin left the ancient star realm, he still heard about that boy. At that time, that boy had already become one of the top Heaven Origin experts in the ancient star realm. He was also a great grandmaster who was proficient in array Dao. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but feel excited and happy. If that's the case, the 1,000-year-old ancient tomb deep under the Dragon Mountain might have something to do with that boy. Was he the one who set up the Heaven Origin Grand Array? Or is he one of the experts buried in the 1,000-year-old tomb? The Sword Soul Burial of Heaven pondered for a moment before saying in a low voice, "No, what I just said is a past event from 1,000 years ago. It has something to do with the ancient star realm. I can't be sure if that past event has anything to do with the ancient tomb under the Dragon Mountain. Boy, if you want to confirm this, you'll have to go to the Dragon Mountain again. I'll have to personally observe the Heaven Origin Grand Array and the ancient tomb before I can confirm if they are related." Ji Tianqing agreed to its request without any hesitation. "Okay, then I'll go to the Dragon Mountain tomb tomorrow morning and let you see the Grand Array for yourself." Today is the 5th chapter. There are 2 more chapters at 18 and 20 tonight. Please continue to ask for recommendation tickets and tips. Chapter 217. Early the next morning, Ji Tianqing left the Sky Pillar sect and rushed to Dragon Mountain. He ran madly through the lofty mountains and steep ridges, and it took him a full 4 hours to reach Dragon Mountain. There were squads of guards patrolling at the foot of Dragon Mountain. Each squad had 10 people, and they were all mystic comprehending experts. He followed the bluestone path halfway up the mountain and arrived at the entrance of the cave where the ore vein was mined. Not only were there more than 20 guards at the entrance, but there were also 2 deacons standing guard. The place was heavily guarded. Ji Tianqing was about to enter the cave when he was stopped by the guards for questioning. He could only show the sky pillar token and explain to the guarding deacons before he was allowed to enter. Inside the cave, there were many new stone lamps in the crisscrossing mine tunnels, making the originally pitch-black tunnels a little brighter. Ji Tianqing followed the mine tunnel and walked deep underground. Along the way, he discovered that there was a guard standing guard at every set distance. The odd-job disciples who had been mining in the tunnels had already evacuated. It seems that the sect values that ancient tomb very much. The value of that ancient tomb far surpasses Dragon Mountain. Ji Tianqing sighed inwardly when he saw this scene. An hour later, he reached the deepest part of the tunnel and came to the edge of the pitch-black cliff. There were 2 deacons and a dozen guards standing guard at the edge of the cliff. Ji Tianqing was still thinking about how to reach the bottom of the cliff. The cliff was 1,000 meters high, and the cliff was steep and straight. There was no place for him to borrow strength. However, after talking with the 2 deacons standing guard at the edge of the cliff, he found out that the sect had already prepared for this. 2 rope ladders were set up at the edge of the cliff. They were 1,000 meters long and extended all the way to the bottom of the cliff. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianqing descended to the bottom of the cliff along the rope ladders. He hurriedly passed through the pitch-black ancient tunnel, crossed the dilapidated square, and finally arrived in front of the ancient tomb. He stood at the edge of the dilapidated square and looked at the Tianyuan array and the ancient tomb in front of him. He saw many figures moving around the array. Around the 1,000-meter Tianyuan Grand Formation, a dozen experts could be vaguely seen. Among them, there were 5 elders in purple robes and 7 or 8 deacons in black robes. Everyone was pacing back and forth to observe, or using their true essence to probe the reaction of the grand array. The huge 5-colored light shield was as dazzling as ever, exuding a majestic true essence fluctuation. Ji Tianqing observed the elders and deacons and said to the Sword Soul Burial of Heaven in his mind, "Senior Burial of Heaven, I'm already near the Tianyuan Grand Formation. Please observe carefully." The Burial of Heaven did not speak, but Ji Tianqing could sense that it was silently observing the Heaven Origin Array. At this moment, a purple-robed elder noticed Ji Tianqing and quickly rushed over. Ji Tianqing turned his head and saw that the elder was Chu Huaishan. Chu Huaishan came in front of him and asked calmly, "Ji Tianqing, why are you here?" Ji Tianqing saluted and explained, "Elder Chu, I've been thinking about this matter, so I came to check on the situation today." Chu Huaishan nodded and did not say much. If it were an ordinary disciple, it would be impossible for them to come near the ancient tomb. Even if they did, they would be chased away by him. But Ji Tianqing was different. Not only was he the #1 genius of the outer sect, but he was also highly regarded and nurtured by the sect master. Chu Huaishan said in a low voice, "Ji Tianqing, the elders are studying the array. Just stay here and watch. Don't go near the array to avoid disturbing them." Ji Tianqing quickly nodded and said, "I understand." After a pause, he asked, "Elder Chu, how is the situation? The elders have been studying it for so many days. Have they made any progress?" Chu Huaishan shook his head, his expression serious. "The elders are all array masters. It's a pity that they have been studying it for so long and have tried many methods, but they have not made any progress. They can't break this array at all." Seeing Chu Huaishan's worry, Ji Tianqing comforted him, "Elder Chu, I believe that the elders can break this array. It's just a matter of time." Chu Huaishan shook his head again and sighed helplessly. "Sigh, it's useless. This Tianyuan array is too exquisite. It's far more complicated and mysterious than an ordinary Tianyuan array. We tried to break the array with arrays. The elders worked together to set up a star-breaking array. They wanted to use the star-breaking array to break the Tianyuan array. In the end, after we activated the array and touched the Tianyuan array, the star-breaking array was devoured by the Tianyuan array's power and collapsed instantly. After a pause, he continued, we tried to break the array by force. We planned to break one of the nodes of the array first, then break the entire array. However, when the elders and I attacked the Tianyuan array with all our might, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. Not only was there no reaction at all, but we were almost sucked away by the array. Last night, the second elder used the Xianji treasure pagoda. We worked together to activate the Xianji treasure pagoda, hoping to use it to break the array. Unfortunately, not only did we fail, but the Xianji treasure pagoda was also devoured by the array's power and was severely damaged. Ji Tianqing listened to Chu Huaishan, his heart full of shock. Seeing Chu Huaishan's anxious and worried look, he couldn't help but ask, Elder Chu, although this Tianyuan array is very powerful, you and the elders are all proficient in array Dao. You've all seen and touched the Tianyuan array. Why is it so difficult? Chu Huaishan stared at him and hesitated for a moment before he decided to reveal some secrets. Ji Tianqing, even heavenly origin grade grand arrays are divided into different grades, Ji Tianqing said. The Tianyuan grand formations that I and the other elders have come into contact with are all ordinary low-grade and mid-grade grand formations. But the Tianyuan array in this tomb must be of the highest grade. This array occupies the core of the Dragon Mountain spirit vein, forming a layout derived from the 5 elements. Therefore, the array's power will never be exhausted. In addition to the layout of the 5 elements, this array also contains the 6 directions stabilizing array, the Big Dipper 7 stars array, and even the 8-pole dragon lock. Just the layout of the 5 elements alone can form an ordinary Tianyuan array. This array also combines the 6 directions stabilizing array, the Big Dipper 7 stars array, and the 8-pole dragon lock. This is incredible. In addition to the layout of the 5 elements, these 3 arrays are all profound knowledge of Tianyuan array. Any one of these arrays can be used to form an upper-grade Tianyuan array, which can be used as a protective array to protect the sect. If we hadn't seen it with our own eyes, we wouldn't have believed that there is such a powerful array master in the world who can combine the mysteries of multiple arrays into one. After hearing Chu Huaishan's explanation, Ji Tianqing finally understood how profound the Tianyuan array was. Chapter 218. Ji Tianqing was weak and had never come into contact with a heavenly prime array. However, he had heard of Xiang Wuji's experiences and legends regarding array Dao. The common heavenly prime array was mostly based on the 5 elements derivation layout, with some minor changes. If an array Dao Grandmaster could master the 6 direction stabilization array or the Big Dipper 7 stars array, he could set up a more powerful heavenly prime array. As for the 8-level dragon lock, it was even more mysterious. Even Xiang Wuji had not fully mastered it. Xiang Wuji had once said that no one in the entire Star Ancient Realm had fully mastered the 8-level dragon lock. However, the heavenly prime array in front of Ji Tianqing was a combination of the 5 elements derivation layout, the Big Dipper 7 stars array, and the 8-level dragon lock. This was an unprecedented and shocking discovery in the martial arts world. Even Xiang Wuji would not be able to break this heavenly prime array. Chu Huaishan, the elders, and the deacons were only at the origin core realm. Of course, they were helpless against this array. After understanding the ins and outs of this heavenly prime array, Ji Tianqing thought to himself, no wonder the Tianjian sect could not enter the ancient tomb even though they had discovered it long ago. Even the Sky Pillar sect could not do anything about the ancient tomb's protective array. The Tianjian sect, which was weaker, could only watch helplessly. He frowned and thought for a moment before asking Chu Huaishan a few more questions. After answering his questions, Chu Huaishan turned and left the square to help the elders study the array. Ji Tianqing had nothing to do, so he strolled around the heavenly prime array. He observed it with interest and silently waited for the sword soul's response from the burial of heaven. The elders and deacons were busy studying the array. No one paid attention to him, but no one chased him away. Before he knew it, a day had passed. Ji Tianqing walked around the heavenly prime array many times and observed it many times. However, his foundation in array Dao was shallow, so he could not find any problems or clues. Fortunately, the sword soul, burial of heaven, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. Its voice rang out in Ji Tianqing's mind. It said in a low voice, "Kid, the heavenly prime array's setup techniques were indeed taught by Kenshin." Ji Tianqing was taking a stroll in the square out of boredom when he suddenly heard sword soul Zhangtian, and a wisp of joy instantly flashed through his eyes. He hurriedly used divine telekinesis to ask in his mind, "Senior buried heaven, do you mean that this grand Tianyuan formation was set up by the young man who received guidance from the sword god?" "That's right, even the words on the stone tablet in the tomb have some of the charm of the sword god." The Dipper's sword's voice was in a low, into the heavenly prime array. "From the looks of it, Kenshin's teachings have benefited the youth greatly. He's imitating Kenshin's sword Dao." Ji Tianqing was a little excited, anxious, and expectant. "It's a pity that I can't break this array and see what the words on the stone tablet are. If I can decipher the words on the stone tablet, I'll be able to figure out who's buried in this ancient tomb." Speaking of this, he suddenly thought of a question. His eyes lit up and he asked expectantly, "By the way, senior burial of heaven, this heavenly prime array was set up by that youth. He became an array Dao grandmaster because of Kenshin's guidance. Since that's the case, you must know this array like the back of your hand, right?" The sword soul, burial of heaven, said proudly, "Of course. It's just a heavenly prime array. It's not worth mentioning to me. This array is almost impossible to break for people in the ancient star realm. After all, it's a combination of 5 heavenly prime array formation techniques. They're all profound and unfathomable array Dao knowledge." 5 array formation techniques. Ji Tianqing frowned and was a little puzzled. "That's right, there are indeed 5. The sword soul, burial of heaven, explained that Elder Chu only mentioned 4 array formation techniques. It's actually incomplete. Perhaps they're too weak and haven't realized that the array formation techniques in this array aren't just the 6 directions of stability, the heavenly 7 stars, and the octupole dragon lock. There's also the 9 cauldrons universe." Ji Tianqing was even more surprised. He thought to himself, the 9 cauldrons universe must be far more profound than the other array formation techniques, right? "Of course. The sword soul, burial of heaven," said solemnly. Ji Tianqing said with a grave expression, "In that case, the sky pillar sect definitely won't be able to break this array. Even the 8 great sects of the ancient star realm don't have the strength to do so. Senior, burial of heaven, can you break this array?" Burial of heaven was silent for a moment, then said indifferently, "I'm just a remnant soul now. I don't even have a physical body. How can I break this array?" "Ah." Ji Tianqing was startled for a moment, then smiled embarrassedly and said, "I forgot about this problem." After thinking for a moment, he probed, "Senior, burial of heaven, although you can't break this array, you can tell me the method to break it." "I'll break it." "You?" Burial of heaven was clearly stunned for a moment, then said with a contemptuous tone, "You're too weak. Even if I teach you the method to break it, it's useless. Unless you reach the origin core realm, then you can give it a try." The anticipation in Ji Tianqing's heart immediately vanished. Reach the origin core realm? How long do I have to wait? At least 2 or 3 years, right? Burial of heaven added in an indifferent tone, "You're limited by your congenital constitution. You can only stop at the 4th level of the path of the sword. You can't cultivate the 5th level of the path of the sword, so it's impossible for you to reach the origin core realm." Ji Tianqing was already a little disappointed, and now that he was stabbed again, he was even more speechless. After a moment, Burial of Heaven fell into a deep sleep and no longer made any sound. Ji Tianqing could only leave and return along the ancient path, climbing the rope ladder and climbing up the cliff. Just as he returned to the cliff, a black-robed deacon quickly came up to him and said in an anxious tone, "Ji Tianqing, the deacon of our sect just sent a message, asking you to return to the sect immediately." He immediately frowned and asked in confusion, "Sir Deacon, what happened?" The deacon said with a solemn expression, "It's an order from the sect master. He's asking you to return to the sect immediately and head to the sky-raising hall for a discussion." Hearing that it was an order from the sect master to summon him back to the sect for a discussion, his heart immediately tightened. He had a premonition that something must have happened. "Thank you, Sir Deacon." He cupped his hands and thanked the deacon, then quickly left the cliff and followed the mine tunnel to the exit. An hour later, he left Dragon Mountain, not daring to waste any time, and rushed back to the sky-raising sect as fast as lightning. By the time he returned to the sky-raising sect, it was already 4 hours later. He went straight to the Scarlet Firmament Peak and entered the sky-raising hall. He saw that sect master Chu Tianqing was already sitting on the throne, waiting with a solemn expression. Today's 7th update has been delivered. This chapter is, First Love Monster Axezy. I would like to thank this brother for the reward of 10,000 book coins. Shao he thanks. Chapter 219. Other than Chu Tianqing, there was another person in the towering sky hall. This person was Xiang Wuji. He sat on the left side of the hall with a serious expression. Although it was noon, the sun outside the hall was scorching hot. Even the air was a little hot. However, the atmosphere in the towering sky hall was a little oppressive and cold. When Ji Tianqing saw Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji's expressions, he knew that the situation was not good. Something big must have happened. He quickly walked to the hall and bowed to Chu Tianqing. Disciple greets sect master. Chu Tianqing nodded expressionlessly and said in a low voice, "You may rise. I summoned you here because there is an important matter that requires your help." Ji Tianqing immediately revealed a puzzled expression. "Sect master, what is so important that you need my help with?" If there was really something big that even Chu Tianqing found troublesome, he did not have the ability to solve it. Chu Tianqing said in a serious tone, "I need the power of your Xianjian bloodline to open the seal under the Crimson Firmament Peak and strengthen the seal. There is a demon's den under the Crimson Firmament Peak. There is a seal formation that is suppressing an unparalleled demon from 1,000 years ago." Chu Tianqing briefly explained the matter of the demon and the seal formation. Ji Tianqing remained silent as he listened to the news carefully. Regarding this matter, he had actually heard about it a long time ago and only heard a few words about it. He was very clear that Ji Ling was highly regarded by the sect master because the Xianjian bloodline could open the seal formation. However, Ji Ling's bloodline power was too thin or her strength was too weak. In the end, she failed. Other than that, Ji Tianqing did not know much about the other matters and did not know what was going on. Now that he heard Chu Tianqing's explanation, he finally understood the whole story. After talking about the unparalleled demon and the seal formation, Chu Tianqing said in a serious tone, "A month ago, a demon expert sneaked into our sect and tried to destroy the seal formation. A few days ago, the demoness possessed the body of a female disciple of the Heart Moon sect and snuck into our sect, secretly moving around in the sect. Last night, the demoness and the high priest of the demon race worked together and led a large group of demon race experts to attack the sealing formation. They wanted to break the formation and rescue the sealed demon. Fortunately, I discovered it in time and repelled the witch and the high priest, preventing their scheme from succeeding." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's pupils suddenly shrank, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. The witch actually possessed a female disciple of the Heart Moon sect. No wonder I always felt that there was something strange about Shu Lan. Looks like my intuition is correct. Unbelievable. That sinister and despicable witch is actually capable of using such a method. His heart was filled with shock and worry. Was Xian hurt? At this time, Chu Tian continued, recently, the demon race has been constantly moving, frequently sneaking into our sect to destroy the Great Array, urgently wanting to rescue the peerless demon, simply too savage. Our sect also has a few elders stationed at Dragon Mountain, studying the 1,000-year-old ancient tomb every day, causing our sect's defense to be even weaker. At this critical moment, after I discussed with the Grand Elder, we decided to immediately open the 9-dragon trapping demon formation without delay. Ji Tianqing was very clear that the last time the demon race sneaked into the sky-bearing sect was when he was imprisoned in the Dark Wind Cave. At that time, he was almost killed by the witch. Just over a month later, the witch possessed Shu Lan again and sneaked into the sky-bearing sect, cooperating with the high priest to destroy the sealing formation. In just 2 months, the demon race sneaked into the sky-bearing sect twice. Their movements were indeed frequent and very arrogant. Originally, sect leader Chu Tian wanted to observe for a while and secretly cultivate him. Now that the situation was urgent, Chu Tian had to carry out the plan in advance, so he summoned him to the sky-bearing palace to discuss the matter and told him the whole story. Ji Tianqing understood everything, and said to Chu Tian with a solemn expression, "Sect leader, protecting the sect's safety and resisting the invasion of the demon race is the responsibility and glory of our sect's disciples. If I can work for the sect, open the 9-dragon trapping demon formation, and strengthen the sealing formation, I will not shirk my duty. But there are some things I have to say. I believe sect leader also knows that long before I entered the sky-bearing sect, Ji Ling used a scheme to steal my Xianjian bloodline. Right now, whether my bloodline is effective or not is still unknown. Moreover, my strength is weak. I cannot guarantee that I can successfully open the 9-dragon trapping demon formation." He believed that Chu Tian definitely knew this. The reason he wanted to say it in person was to see Chu Tiantian's attitude. After all, with Ji Ling's example, he had to be on guard. If he couldn't open the 9-dragon trapping demon formation, how would the sect leader treat him? Of course, Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji understood what he meant. They both smiled playfully. Xiang Wuji glanced at him and said unhappily, "Kid, what are you worried about? You are now half a disciple of this old man. Even if you can't open the formation, as long as you keep your mouth shut and don't reveal the sect's secrets, no one will do anything to you." Chu Tian also said with a solemn expression, "Ji Tianqing, this seat understands your worries and concerns. Actually, this seat doesn't have much hope that you can successfully open the 9-dragon trapping demon formation. This seat has made this decision because I want to do my best and leave it to fate. Moreover, putting aside your Xianjian bloodline, the martial talent and aptitude you have displayed are worthy of our sect's attention and nurturing. As long as you are loyal to the sect and swear to protect the sect's core secrets, this seat will value you as always and nurture you into a cornerstone of the sect. Otherwise, why do you think this seat gave you the sky-bearing token back then?" Since Xiang Wuji and Chu Tian had expressed their stance, Ji Tianqing's doubts were dispelled. He immediately bowed to Chu Tian and said in a solemn tone, "Since sect leader and senior Xiang are willing to be honest with me, then I have no more concerns and am willing to contribute to the sect's safety." Seeing this scene, Xiang Wuji grinned and revealed a mocking smile. He muttered in a low voice, "This old man has long seen that a little brat like you isn't a good person. Humph, our sect borrowed your bloodline to open the great formation, and you took the opportunity to inquire about our sect's attitude and negotiate with the sect leader?" Ji Tianqing heard his muttering, but pretended not to hear and his expression didn't change. He could be loyal to the sky-bearing sect, but this was based on the sect's affection and righteousness towards him. He wouldn't be foolishly loyal and die for the sky-bearing sect. After losing his value, he would be kicked away by the sky-bearing sect. At this moment, Chu Tian flicked his finger and a red pill flew in front of him. "Ji Tianqing, this is a blood spirit pill. It can help you refine the power of your bloodline. Take this pill immediately. After you refine the medicinal power, this seat will take you to the demon's cave and reopen the Great Formation. Today's update is still 7 chapters. Requesting recommendation tickets and rewards. Chapter 220. Ji Tianqing took the spiritual blood pill and swallowed it without hesitation. He sat in the hall and began to refine it. Since Xiang Wuji and Chu Tianqing had already expressed their stance, he didn't have any psychological burden. If he could successfully open the 9-dragon trapping demon formation, everyone would be happy. Even if he failed to open the formation, the sky-bearing sect wouldn't punish him. As for the sealing formation, the sect master and Xiang Wuji would think of another way. The sky-bearing palace quieted down and time passed quickly. Xiang Wuji and Chu Tianqing waited patiently, their faces calm as they pondered. 4 hours passed quickly, and Ji Tianqing finally refined the medicinal efficacy of the spiritual blood pill. This pill was very special. It was neither a healing pill nor a pill to increase one's cultivation. Its function was to stimulate the bloodline and refine Ji Tianqing's Xian sword bloodline. Under the effects of the pill, he could clearly feel the blood in his body flowing faster and stronger, like a surging flood. In this state, his skin was dark red and his body felt hot. Chu Tianqing saw that the time was right and decisively ordered, "The time has come. We should move." With that, he and Xiang Wuji got up and left the sky-bearing palace, bringing Ji Tianqing into the depths of the palace. Not long after, the 3 of them entered a dark secret room. The secret room was pitch black, but there was a powerful formation protecting it. It emitted surging energy waves. Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji entered the secret room first, followed by Ji Tianqing. There was a circular formation on the floor of the secret room. It was engraved with dense patterns, as well as many special formation symbols. The secret room was originally empty. Other than this formation, there was nothing else. When Chu Tianqing waved his hands and used a secret formation technique, the formation on the floor was activated. A dazzling white light lit up in the formation's patterns, condensing into a blazing white door. This oval-shaped door was a teleportation formation. It led directly to the demon's den deep under the red firmament peak. "Let's go," Chu Tianqing said in a low voice. He was the first to step into the teleportation gate, only to see the blazing white light of the gate flash, and he disappeared with a whoosh. Then, Xiang Wuji also entered the portal. Ji Tianqing followed closely behind and stepped into the blazing white light gate. He only saw a blur in front of his eyes, and the dazzling white light flickered before disappearing. Shwa! The next moment, the light in front of his eyes returned to darkness, and his feet landed on the ground. He stood in place without moving, his eyes scanning the surroundings. It was a cave in the depths of the earth. The cave was not big, only the size of a secret chamber. The walls were made of rough dark brown rocks. There were 2 stone lamps on the wall, emitting a dim yellow light that barely illuminated the floor of the cave. There was also a circular array on the ground, similar to the teleportation array in the secret room. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown as the air was somewhat dry and cold, and there was also a faint fishy smell in the air. "Let's go." At this moment, Xiang Wuji reminded him. He raised his head to look ahead and saw a dimly lit passageway. Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji had already entered the passageway and walked into the darkness. Ji Tianqing was unfamiliar with all of this, so he didn't ask much and quickly followed. After the 3 of them passed through a dark passageway that was hundreds of meters long, they finally entered the underground cavern. The so-called underground cavern was an empty cave with a radius of thousands of meters. The giant cave was circular, and the air was constantly filled with black fog and demonic chi. The walls were made of black rocks, and there were many spots of colorful light that seemed to be embedded with gems. The ceiling of the cave was hundreds of meters high. Ji Tianqing used the dim light to see that the ceiling of the cave was flat rock, and there were dense array patterns carved into it. The floor of the cave was made of rough rocks, and there were many sharp edges. In the corner near the wall, there was some fertile black soil, and there were some moss and mushrooms growing out of it. But the moss and mushrooms had been contaminated by the demonic qi for many years, and had already changed. They were now purple-black in color, and were emitting a faint red light. The air in the cave was not only cold, but also filled with the chill of death, and there was a thick smell of blood. As Ji Tianqing walked through the cave, he felt like he was passing through the underworld. Surrounded by the aura of death, he felt cold all over. But the most terrifying thing was that there were some gloomy whispers and roars that came out of nowhere, quietly flowing and echoing through the cave. These sounds were like weeping and complaining, like the sobbing of the wind, and like the howling of ghosts. It made one's hair stand on end and their scalps tingle. Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji clearly came here often, and were used to all of this. The two of them passed through the layers of black fog, and walked straight to the center of the cave. Ji Tianqing followed them to the center of the cave, and saw a 10-meter-tall altar in front of him. The altar was in the shape of a pyramid. It was made of black rocks, gold, red, blue, and white gems, and it had an ancient aura. Gems containing various kinds of vital essence were arranged in a regular pattern on the patterns and patterns of the array, emitting a mysterious aura. At the base of the altar, there were 9 lifelike statues of divine dragons, arranged in a circle around the altar. The 9 divine dragons were of different colors, and their postures were also different. Some were like flood dragons coming out of the sea, some were like divine dragons soaring into the sky, and some were like clouds riding on fog. But the one thing in common was that no matter what postures the 9 divine dragons took, their heads were all facing the altar. But the altar was not activated, and there was no vital essence light shining. The 9 divine dragons were dim and lifeless, and they did not have the aura of life. Wisps of black fog continuously surged out from the bottom of the altar, filling the entire demon's denver. The whispers and roars that Ji Tianqing heard before also came from the bottom of the altar. They were intermittent, but never stopped. He stared at the altar for a while, and roughly understood. This ancient altar should be the 9 dragons trapping demon formation that the sect master had mentioned. As expected, Chu Tianqing turned to look at him, and said in a serious tone, "Ji Tianqing, this is the 9 dragons trapping demon formation that our sect's elder set up back then. Under this great formation, there is an ancient formation that has already been destroyed, and it seals that unparalleled demon. Now, I will teach you the method to activate the 9 dragons trapping demon formation. You must remember it well, and you cannot make the slightest mistake. After you learn it, the Grand Elder and I will work together to help you activate the formation. Whether our sect can obtain another 100 years of peace and stability depends on your success." Chu Tianqing's expression was solemn, and his tone was serious. Xiang Wuji glanced at Ji Tianqing, and nodded at him with a serious expression. Chapter 221. Ji Tianqing understood that this matter was related to the sky-bearing sect's 1,000 years of foundation. He felt that he had a heavy responsibility and didn't dare to slack off. Then, Chu Tianqing waved his hands and used a secret technique to force out an egg-sized ball of golden light from his palms. He slowly extended his hand and pressed it against Ji Tianqing's forehead. That dazzling ball of golden light immediately drilled into Ji Tianqing's mind. Suddenly, Ji Tianqing felt countless amounts of information rush into his mind. His head was flooded with information that made him dizzy. Without a doubt, the golden light that Chu Tianqing sent into his mind was the method to activate the 9 dragons trapping demon array. The 9 dragons trapping demon array was a heaven origin level array. It was incomparably profound. Even the method to activate it contained a vast amount of information. If Chu Tianqing were to use his mouth to explain, he wouldn't be able to finish it even if he talked for a day and a night. For a heaven origin level powerhouse like him, of course, He had better methods to teach Ji Tianqing the method to activate the array. Ji Tianqing endured the impact of the endless information in his mind. It took him a long time to wake up. After the dizziness in his mind dissipated, he immediately sat cross-legged on the ground. He closed his eyes and silently refined the information in his mind, learning the method to activate the array. Time passed little by little. The demon cave was cold, dark, and silent. Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji stood beside Ji Tianqing, silently protecting him and patiently waiting. After a full 3 hours, it was already late at night. Ji Tianqing finally refined the ball of golden light and grasped the method to activate the 9 dragons trapping demon array. He opened his eyes and saw Chu Tianqing looking at him, his eyes filled with anticipation. Ji Tianqing, how's your learning? Ji Tianqing nodded. Don't worry, Sect Master. I have already grasped the method to activate the array. We can begin now. Chu Tianqing revealed a gratified expression and nodded. Very good. Xiang Wuji smiled silently and whispered to Chu Tianqing, this old man told you a long time ago that this kid's talent in arrays is extraordinary. Do you believe me now? Chu Tianqing silently nodded and revealed a knowing smile. Ji Tianqing saw the two of them acting so mysteriously and couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. However, it was a critical moment for the restart array now, and he could not probe further. Ji Tianqing, come with me. Chu Tianqing was the first to ascend the altar and walked towards the top. Ji Tianqing hurriedly followed after him, stepping on the steps of the altar and ascending to the top. Under Chu Tianqing's instructions, he climbed to the top of the altar and sat cross-legged on a circular stone plate. This stone plate was only the size of a water jar, but it was the core array disk of the 9 dragons trapping devil formation. It was engraved with mysterious array patterns, densely packed grooves and patterns. Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji sat down on either side of him. Their palms glowed with true essence as they pressed down on his shoulders. Suddenly, Ji Tianqing could clearly sense that the palms of these two people contained a majestic flood of true essence that could pour out at any time and drown him. Ji Tianqing, you can begin. Hearing Chu Tianqing's voice, Ji Tianqing hurriedly collected his thoughts and abandoned all distracting thoughts. His expression was solemn as he raised his palms and made a special hand gesture. He drew out a mysterious arc as he activated the formation. At the same time, Xiang Wuji and Chu Tianqing's palms also poured enormous amounts of true essence into his body. At that moment, Ji Tianqing's body swelled violently like an inflated balloon. The true essence of the two heavens prime cultivators was too terrifying. It almost made him explode and die. Fortunately, he immediately calmed down and waved his hands to activate the array. The endless true essence turned into 2 5-colored pillars of light and poured out. Bang! Bang! With a muffled sound, the 2 5-colored pillars of light poured onto the circular array disk, immediately lighting up the array patterns on the disk. The dark brown array disk instantly became a riot of colors and lit up with dazzling 5-colored brilliance. The densely packed array patterns also flickered with 5-color true essence radiance and emitted a majestic true essence fluctuation. Ji Tianqing saw with his own eyes that after the 2 5-colored pillars of true essence poured into the array disk, they were dispersed by the disk and poured into the altar. Thus, starting from the formation plate beneath him, the altar was gradually lit up from top to bottom, lighting up with dazzling multicolored light. As Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji continued to pour their true essence into the altar, the entire altar became dazzling. The patterns on the altar also became lifelike and shone brightly. A majestic and mighty aura emerged spontaneously from the altar and spread out in all directions. In less than a quarter of an hour, the entire altar was lit up. The boundless suppressive power emanating from the altar also enveloped the entire demon's den, suppressing everything within a radius of 1,000 meters. It was Ji Tianqing's first time touching the heavens prime array. Feeling the majestic power of the altar, he was shocked. However, This was only the first step in reactivating the 9 dragons trapping demon array. He didn't dare to waste any time and hurriedly waved his hands to activate the array. He carefully controlled the array disk and activated the array in the altar bit by bit. This process was very slow, difficult, and dangerous. There was no room for error. If he made a mistake, all his previous efforts would be wasted or he would suffer a backlash from the array. It was very likely that his life would be in danger. He had to abandon all distracting thoughts and focus on activating the array. He wasn't in a hurry. After a few minutes, the array disk below him started to change. A few patterns started to twist and turn. This meant that a small portion of the array in the altar had been activated. After a few minutes, a few more patterns on the array disk started to move and produce some mysterious changes. After a few minutes, a dozen patterns on the array disk seemed to have come alive. After an hour, as time passed, the patterns on the array disk changed more and more. The array in the altar was also gradually being activated. When Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji saw the subtle changes in the array disk, they were gratified. Their eyes were filled with anticipation. Ji Tianqing's array skills didn't disappoint them. They saw the light of success in reactivating the array. Before they knew it, 6 hours had passed. The thousands of patterns on the array disk all seemed to have been given life and started to move according to a special pattern. The entire altar was no longer lifeless. Not only was it shining brightly, but all the arrays were activated. A majestic aura surged around the altar. At this time, Chu Tianqing's expression was serious. He said in a sonorous voice, "Ji Tianqing, we are very close to success. Now there is one last step. You need to inject your blood essence into the array disk and activate the array with Xian Jian's bloodline. When the 9 divine dragon statues light up, the 9 dragons trapping demon array will be successfully activated. Success or failure depends on this." Chapter 222. Hearing Chu Tianqing's words, Ji Tianqing was also filled with anticipation. Without hesitation, he pricked his fingertip and forced out a drop of blood from his heart. He dripped it onto the disc array beneath him. A drop of crimson blood dripped onto the disc array and spread outwards along the grooves. The disc array was still glowing brightly. The altar did not seem to have changed at all. Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji's hearts were in their throats. They stared at the disc array, hoping for a miraculous change. The second drop of crimson blood dripped from Ji Tianqing's fingertip onto the disc array. The crimson blood continued to spread outwards along the lines of the disc array. The disc array finally showed some changes. It was dyed with a layer of crimson. The power of the altar seemed to have increased as well. It shone even brighter than before. When the third drop of blood dripped onto the disc array finally underwent a miraculous change. The patterns on the disc array sped up, intertwining and twisting. The array inside the altar sped up as well. It intertwined and overlapped with each other, producing a miraculous change. The 3 of them could clearly feel that the power of the altar was increasing rapidly. In just a few breaths, it had doubled. Buzz. Buzz buzz. The array inside the altar sped up and exploded with a vast amount of power. The entire altar began to tremble. The 9 dragons around the altar also shone with a faint 5-colored brilliance, exuding powerful energy waves. Seeing this, Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with joy. This is great. Ji Tianqing's blood is indeed useful. We're finally going to succeed. The 2 of them were excited. They stared at the disc array with sparkling eyes and secretly clenched their fists. Ji Tianqing was also overjoyed. However, he did not dare to relax. He continued to force out a 4th drop of blood and dripped it onto the disc array. The changes on the disc array sped up. It shone with a five-colored brilliance, forming huge seal words and array symbols. The 9 divine dragons around the altar also became more and more dazzling, becoming lifelike and extremely imposing. As time went by, the 9-dragon trapping devil formation was about to be fully activated. It emitted a domineering aura that could suppress everything. That formless aura enveloped the entire demon's den. The power of the array enveloped the entire demon's den and was constantly strengthening the seal. The unparalleled demon sealed under the formation also sensed the powerful aura of the 9 dragons trapping demon formation and seemed to be panicking. The devil struggled violently, roaring and howling non-stop. Large clouds of black mist surged out from under the altar, from which came shrill howls that were filled with resentment. Ji Tianqing's face turned pale under the demonic sound, and his consciousness became a little blurry. Xiang Wuji and Chu Tianqing hurriedly channeled their power to protect him, preventing him from being hurt by the demon's roar. Finally, the array formation of the 9 divine dragons was fully activated, emitting an aura that could suppress heaven and earth. The 9 divine dragon statues were connected to the 9 mountain peaks of the Sky Pillar sect. They imperceptibly gathered the power of the 9 mountain peaks. The so-called 9-dragon trapping demon formation used the power of the 9 mountain peaks of the Sky Pillar sect to form a formation to suppress the unparalleled demon. As long as the Sky Pillar sect did not decline and the 9-dragon spirit veins were not destroyed, this 9-dragon trapping demon formation would be able to grow and multiply, forever suppressing the demon. At this time, Ji Tianqing's Xian Jian bloodline power had already activated the 9-dragon trapping demon formation. The altar released a dazzling 5-colored curtain of light that extended in all directions, condensing into a formation light barrier that was 1,000 meters wide. Once the formation light barrier was formed, the 9-dragon trapping demon formation would be fully activated and complete. At this time, the unparalleled demon in the sealing formation was also furious to the extreme. Endless black mist and demonic energy crazily surged out from under the altar, condensing into large patches of black clouds in the demon's den. An incomparably violent impact fiercely slammed into the ground of the demon's den, causing the entire demon's den to shake. Muffled rumbling sounds continuously came from the ground, and huge cracks appeared on the ground. Suddenly, the unparalleled demon sensed Ji Tianqing's presence and was stunned. Its angry roar came to an abrupt stop, and the shaking ground calmed down. After a moment of silence, the unparalleled demon suddenly let out a shrill howl filled with shock and anger. The howl was in the language of the demon race, and its voice was somewhat hoarse and difficult to distinguish. However, Ji Tianqing could clearly hear the resentment, hatred, and murderous intent in his voice. He could even feel that the howl of the unparalleled demon was directed at him. In just a few short breaths, the 5-colored curtain of light completely enveloped the demon's den, forming a semicircular formation light barrier. This formation gathered the power of the entire Sky Pillar sect and firmly suppressed the unparalleled demon. The unparalleled demon no longer made any sound or movement. It could not even release the black mist, demonic energy, or cold energy of death. The demon's den calmed down. Xiang Wuji was proficient in the language of the demon race and had already understood the howl. He glanced at Ji Tianqing with a strange expression, and a strange light flashed in his eyes as he vaguely suspected something. Ji Tianqing asked with a puzzled expression, "Sect Master, Senior Xiang, what did that unparalleled demon say just now?" Chu Tianqing did not quite understand the demon's words, so he looked at Xiang Wuji questioningly. Xiang Wuji said with a solemn expression, "The demon only said a few words. It's actually you. Even you have such a day." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing frowned, feeling even more puzzled. His intuition told him that the demon's words were directed at him. But he did not understand what the demon meant. At this moment, Chu Tianqing revealed a relieved smile and said, "We have successfully activated the 9 dragons trapping demon formation and finally strengthened the seal. We have won another 100 years of peace for our sect. Ji Tianqing, you have done a great service for our sect this time." This king will carefully consider how to reward you. Let's go, let's leave this place first. Chu Tianxing was in an extremely good mood. After he finished speaking, he led Ji Tianqing down the altar. At the same time, 9 mountain-like divine dragon phantoms appeared in the pitch-black night sky above the Sky Pillar sect. The 9 divine dragon phantoms shone with a dazzling 5-colored brilliance, illuminating the night sky within a radius of a few hundred miles. They erupted with a domineering aura that suppressed heaven and earth. Countless disciples of the Sky Pillar sect were awakened by this phenomenon, and they all revealed astonished and aghast expressions. The 2 sects thousands of miles away from the Sky Pillar sect also saw the divine dragon phantoms in the sky and were shocked by this earth-shaking phenomenon. In the demon cave thousands of miles away from the Sky Pillar sect, the High Priest and Blood Moon Infanta also saw the phenomenon in the night sky. Chapter 223. After a long time, the 9 divine dragon phantoms in the night sky gradually dissipated. Everything returned to tranquility. The night was still dark as if nothing had happened. On the mountain peak where the demon cave was located, the Blood Moon Countess and the High Priest stood side by side on the mountain peak. Facing the night wind, they looked in the direction of the Sky Pillar sect, their eyes filled with hatred. After a long time, the Blood Moon Countess cursed in a low voice, "Damned Sky Pillar sect. That group of human reptiles who deserve to die 10,000 deaths. They actually activated a new sealing formation and completely suppressed His Majesty the Demon Monarch." The High Priest narrowed his eyes, a cold glint surging in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "I didn't expect the Sky Pillar sect to act so quickly. Our operation last night failed, and they reactivated the 9 dragons formation tonight. Fortunately, we had the smoke net umbrella. Otherwise, we would have died under Chu Tianqing's sword last night." As he spoke, he subconsciously touched the left side of his chest. There was a long and narrow sword wound there. It was so deep that the bone could be seen. The skin and flesh of the wound were as black as charcoal, preventing the wound from healing. Just a little bit more and the sword would have pierced his heart and taken his life. The Blood Moon Countess wore a loose black robe and a cloak, only revealing a pair of blood-red eyes. When she heard the High Priest's words, deep hatred surged in her eyes. During the operation last night, her primordial spirit had possessed Shulan's body. After being seen through by Chu Tianxing, she had been stabbed in the heart and throat during the fight with Chu Tianxing. However, the one who had been killed was Shulan. Her primordial spirit had escaped from Shulan's corpse. With the High Priest's help, she had successfully escaped from the Sky Pillar sect. Thinking of the fierce battle last night, as well as the more than 30 demon race guards killed by Chu Tianxing, her hatred for the sky-bearing sect grew even deeper. After a moment of silence, she turned to look at the High Priest beside her and asked, "High Priest, the Sky Pillar sect has reactivated a sealing formation. His Majesty the Demon Monarch definitely won't be able to break that formation in a short time. We also won't be able to sneak into the Sky Pillar sect and destroy that formation. What should we do next?" The High Priest frowned and pondered for a moment. Then, a mocking sneer appeared in his eyes. He obviously had an idea. He said with a playful tone, "Princess, you know that humans are the most hypocritical, cunning, and greedy race. For the sake of benefits, they will scheme against each other and even fight to the death. If we want to deal with the Sky Pillar sect, we don't necessarily have to do it ourselves. When the time is right, we can borrow the strength of other human sections." Keek. At this point, the High Priest sneered sinisterly. The Blood Moon Infanta frowned and asked doubtfully, "High Priest, do you already have a plan? How are you going to borrow the strength of the other sects?" Of course I have a better plan." The High Priest looked as if he had a card up his sleeve. With a confident tone, he said, "Princess, you should stay in the cave and recuperate. After a while, I will show you a good show about the internal conflicts of the humankind." Hearing this, the Blood Moon Commandery Princess became more and more curious. High Priest, do you mean, we can use the Tianjin sect? The High Priest purposely kept them in suspense and nodded with a smile. At dawn, Ji Tianqing returned to the Tempest Courtyard. When he left the underground demon's cave, Chu Tiansheng gave him 2 dew pills to help him recover his vitality. After all, in order to restart the 9 dragons trapping devil array, he had consumed 4 drops of his heart's blood essence. Heart's blood essence was different from ordinary blood. It was the condensed essence of one's bloodline and formed from the accumulation of one's true essence. It had a powerful effect. Every time a martial artist lost a drop of heart's blood essence, his vitality would be damaged. If too much heart's blood essence was lost, it would affect one's strength and realm, which would lead to serious consequences. Tonight, Ji Tianqing had consumed his heart's blood essence and was fully focused on controlling the 9 dragons trapping devil array. His body and mind had consumed a lot of energy. When he returned to his room, his face was still pale and his breath was unstable. He hurriedly entered the secret chamber and took the dew pills given to him by Chu Tiansheng. He hurriedly circulated his energy to recover his vitality. Unknowingly, a day had passed. On the morning of the 2nd day, he finally refined the medicinal effects of the jade dew pill and finally recovered to normal. After finishing his cultivation, he didn't leave the secret chamber. Recalling the words of the unparalleled demon, his heart was still full of doubts and doubts. He vaguely had some guesses in his heart, but he couldn't be sure. Therefore, he decided to ask the sword soul of the burial of heaven. He focused his consciousness in the black hole in his dantian and entered Kenshin's tomb with a swish. Flying through the gray sky and the cold and desolate wasteland, he soon arrived at the towering sword steel. Senior burial of heaven, I have something to ask. Ji Tianqing saluted the sword steel and shouted loudly. After a while, the deep voice of the burial of heaven came out from the towering sword steel. Boy, what do you want? Ji Tianqing hurriedly explained, Senior burial of heaven, the matter is like this. In the depths of our sect's Red Cloud Peak, there is an unparalleled demon suppressed. According to the sect master, 1,000 years ago, the unparalleled demon went on a killing spree in the Star Ancient Realm and was defeated by an expert sword. He briefly explained the legend of the unparalleled demon and what happened to him in the Devil's Den the night before. After he finished, the tone of the sword soul of the burial of heaven changed a little. It seemed to have become a little subtle. Boy, after you activated the seal, the unparalleled demon roared at you. It seemed to be full of hatred and killing intent towards you. Are you sure that the demon's roar was targeted at you? Ji Tianqing nodded with a solemn expression and said, Senior burial of heaven, I believe in my intuition. The burial of heaven was silent for a moment. No one knew what it was thinking. After a while, it asked again, what did the unparalleled demon say to you? Ji Tianqing answered truthfully, the demon spoke the demon race's language. I couldn't understand it. But our sect's grand elder told me that the demon was talking about, it was actually you. You also have a day like this. Hearing this, the burial of heaven was silent again. It didn't say a word. Ji Tianqing asked with a face full of doubt, Senior burial of heaven, I'm just a 17-year-old boy from a secular kingdom. I definitely have nothing to do with the unparalleled demon from 1,000 years ago. What the unparalleled demon said definitely has nothing to do with me. So I'm guessing that the unparalleled demon might have something to do with Kenshin. Was that sentence said to Kenshin? The burial of heaven was still silent, as if it was thinking about how to answer. Ji Tianqing waited patiently for a long time before he heard its old and indifferent voice say, there is heaven's will in the unseen world. Many things seem to be coincidental, but they are actually heaven's will. Mortals try to guess heaven's will in vain. They always want to understand everything and explore the unknown. But in the end, they often don't have a good ending. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.